Creepy's fun. I love creepy. I love scary movies. I love being scared. I love reading creepy stuff. I love writing creepy stuff. I like talking to people who have encountered creepy stuff. I don't like to encounter it myself. at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, beloved of America!
They were sitting around having supper, and there was a noise from upstairs. Immediately in Dan's mind, he was thinking, it's here. The Harlequin's upstairs, wondering where I am. It's searching for me. And he said his father, who had been, denying any of this had been happening to his son, let out just a loud moan and then a cackle. Oh, God. And froze. He just froze. The baby's mom picked him up, and the baby was looking at this man over his mom's shoulder, and he grinned. And then the eyes just went from blue to completely black. I love a good ghost story, a good UFO story, a good Bigfoot story, but these bizarre stories that people never hear are absolutely my favorite.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Banal of America Audio, with your host, Tim Banal. What is going on, my friends? This is Tim Banal of BanalofAmerica.com with another edition of BoAAudio Season 7, coming at you with a real barn burner of a program this week as we welcome back our old friend Jason Offutt, who returns to BoAAudio for a lengthy conversation covering the many odd and creepy stories found at his blog, From the Shadows. He has been chronicling the weird and unusual for years, and since I had some time in the off-season, I wanted to sit down with Jason and really go over some of the really strange stories that he has reported on at From the Shadows. So I spent about a day or so just digging into that massive archive at his blog and cherry-picking some of the weirdest stuff I could find. We cover a myriad of stories here, and it'd be damn near impossible for me to tell you all about them. Let me give you some of the highlights. We're going to hear tales of wicked priests, harlequin entities, gnome-like creatures, get an update on the black-eyed kids as well as black-eyed people. We're going to hear a story about a fae girl. We'll discuss time travelers and get an update on his research and investigation into the infamous time traveler Madman Markham. We'll also hear the story of a haunted shopping mall, Gravity Hill in Missouri, a man who claims that he dated an alien, and much, much more. Just a whole slew of really wild stories that Jason Offutt has uncovered and reported on at his blog, From the Shadows. And we've got links all over Banal of America to the specific stories. So if you're listening to this and you want to learn more about, say, the Fae Girl or the Harlequin entities, head on over to BOA and there's links to all the different stories you're going to hear us talk about here in this conversation. As always, when we welcome Jason Offutt back to the program, it is an episode that is packed with creepy stories, but also plenty of laughs. Really feels like the two of us are just sitting at a bar, sharing stories and talking about the world of the paranormal. It is the perfect companion to your Memorial Day festivities or summer barbecues. Sit around the campfire with this one, my friends, because you're going to be spooked more often than not as we welcome back our longtime friend, Jason Offutt. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Jason Offutt, allow me to provide you with a little background on him. Jason Offutt is a writer and college journalism instructor. At various times in his career, he has also been a newspaper editor, general assignment reporter, photographer, newspaper consultant, bartender, farmhand, and the mayor of a small Midwestern town. His books include Haunted Missouri, Darkness Walks from Anomalous Books, What Lurks Beyond, the Paranormal in Your Backyard, as well as the humor book On Being Dad. On that note, Jason has been named Humor Writer of the Year multiple times by the Missouri Press Association. He lives with his wife and children in Maryville, Missouri, and his website is www.from-the-shadows.blogspot.com. Check it out. And with all that said, let's get down to business, my friends, and rock and roll. This interview was recorded on March 23rd, 2012. Jason Offutt regales us with a collection of creepy tales on BoAAudio Season 7. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of BoAAudio Season 7. This time on the program, we're welcoming back a good friend of ours. He's been on several times in the past. He's a staple of the baseball special, but we're going to be talking about the world of the paranormal here tonight. And he really is a master reporter, researcher, storyteller, so I'm really looking forward to really delving into some crazy stories with him. He's the author of the latest book, Paranormal Missouri, Show Me Your Monsters, as well as What Lurks Beyond the Paranormal in Your Backyard. Darkness Walks, the book on shadow people that is tremendously popular, as well as Haunted Missouri. And he's a humor writer who has won numerous awards and wrote the book on being dad. So, welcome back to the program. Very excited. It's going to be fast, loose, and very laid back. Jason Offutt, welcome back to BoAAudio.
Tim Bonneau, always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. Check is in the mail.
Yeah, I'm sorry you mentioned baseball.
We're going to get the regular listeners are going to be wringing their hands if we even go there. So
which I'm not. Just regular listeners, I'm a Royals fan, so just weep for me.
So before we sort of get into the overall discussion, how you been in the last? I think it's been a couple of years since we had you on the show. So how you been? In the last couple of years, what's been going on with you? What are you working on? What's up in the world of Offutt?
Well, I took a short break actually from writing paranormal books. I've still kept my blog From the Shadows up. I'm still seriously interested in the paranormal field, but as you mentioned, I also write humor. So for the past probably year and a half, I've been pursuing a couple of different humor books. One of them, which I've gotten some interest in from publishers. I haven't picked one yet, but is I think I've mentioned this to you before at some point. Is How to Kill Monsters with just stuff you got laying around the house.
Yep, I remember that concept. Yeah.
I've got that and a travel book I've been working on. So I have kind of taken a break, but some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, I am gearing up for another book on the paranormal called Dangerous Entities.
Oh, scary, dangerous entities. I like that. That sounds ominous. Which I like. I'm a big fan of the ominous. So
right, anything that gets anything that gets a reaction or somebody's panties in a wad is always great.
So what I thought we were going to do here for tonight's conversation was, as you mentioned, the blog From the Shadows is just chock full of amazing stories on there that you've been told by people and you've looked into and written some tremendous blog posts, articles about these various incidents, a whole litany of stuff on there. So I spent the last day or so just going through the blog, looking it over, and sort of compiling my list here of Offutt's oddities. So we could talk about some of these weird tales that you've chronicled over the years From the Shadows.
Yeah, which is quite an undertaking that you took, Tim, because I mean there's like 5 years worth of stories on the blog.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, I didn't read all of them, but I went through as many as I could, and the ones that really stood out, I was like, put that on the list here for Offutt's oddities, because... Well,
I can already tell you've read more than my family has.
Well, I'm like family now at this point, so I guess
at this point, absolutely.
Yeah. So
you're that uncle who leaves the bathroom open at family dinners.
Light a match. So, so we'll just dive in, I guess, on these stories. So the one that you had mentioned to me when we were sort of corresponding back and forth and setting this whole thing up was the Wicked Priest,
which is a very, talking about ominous, with a very creepy tale here. So I guess regale us with the story of the wicked priest, and, I'm sure I'll pepper you with some follow-up questions as to the makeup of this tale.
Well, the weird thing and the really cool thing, and the thing that makes me, one of the things that makes me glad I don't live in San Francisco, is this priest, because after I got information and asked questions and wrote the story about this first encounter, I've had 2 more people from the same area who ride the same mass transit system around the San Francisco area who've encountered this priest entity. The first one that I talked with, this woman had to go into work on an odd day. She had to go on a Saturday, and she normally didn't go, but she took the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, they call it BART, to work. And on the way home, as she was walking out of her office building to go to catch this train, she was clicking off things in her head that she had to do. And she's worried about work, worried about getting things done. So she gets on the train. She's not really paying attention, and all of a sudden she looks up and she sees this priest, and he's staring at her. And she really doesn't think too much about it at first, but anybody staring at you really kind of creeps you out. So she started looking at the guy, and he had white, almost translucent hair, and it was pretty thin. He had a really large birthmark that covered most of the side of his face.
Oh.
And his eyes were almost all completely white. She did notice some blue in the iris, but it was like really, really washed out pale blue. And she realized, the guy's staring at me, and the way his eyes look, he's probably blind. Until he started talking to her. And he started telling her the things that she'd been thinking before she got on the train.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this, of course, freaked the hell out of her.
Yeah.
And so she changed trains or changed cars and got out of got off the train a little early because she didn't want to get off the train at the same stop, at her stop, and this guy follow her. So she got off at a different stop, and she waited until the train was gone. She didn't see the priest get off, and as she was leaving, she stopped to buy another pass for the next week, and she saw a bum just sitting on the ground. I'm not politically correct, so he was a bum. Sitting on the ground, and he asked for money, and she looked down, and it was the same guy. He wasn't dressed as a priest anymore, but it was the same guy, same birthmark, same eyes, same everything, but he was just, dressed, very, very shabbily, and he asked for money, and then he said something about what what he'd been talking about her on the train.
Oh my God.
So she ran and got out of there.
Yeah.
And thankfully has never seen the guy again. But after that story was published, I had a couple other people contact me with basically exactly the same tale. One guy's was just nails on with hers, except for when he got off the train, he again made sure that the guy didn't follow him, and he went and got his car and started to drive, and he had 2 ways to go, either right toward his house or left, and turning right, this priest was standing in the middle of the road.
Oh my God.
It was like, this guy almost wet his pants staring at this thing, and he turned left, of course, and took, a really long, strange way to get to his house, because he didn't want this priest, this entity, whatever it was, to follow him there. And the third one, again, was very similar, except for this time there was physical contact. The priest touched this woman's hair, and she said it felt sticky. Like getting a spider web caught in your hair, of course, but it was something, bigger because it was fingers. And when she turned around to confront the guy that had been sitting back there, he was just gone.
That is so weird. It's like got so many different weird elements. At first, like the homeless guy twists kind of in that first one, because I was sort of going that way. I was like, maybe this is some eccentric homeless person, but then it's like he also has this like supernatural ability. It's very weird.
Well, I'm envisioning Agent Smith from The Matrix.
Yeah.
I mean, appearing as a homeless guy, all of a sudden, but he didn't get up and, use jujitsu on her.
He just read her mind. This is even weirder.
Which is worse. I might rather get my ass kicked.
Yeah. And it's not even like he was saying things that she was thinking at the time. It's like he wasn't even around when she was thinking that stuff. So it's...
Well, he might have been.
That's true, yeah.
Yes.
Very weird. And I presume...
But what is this? I mean, as she told me, and as the other two people told me, they weren't, freaked out by the fact that he was a priest, because, they see people in religious clothing all the time. No big deal. But, all of the strange things that strange and creepy things that sprung forth from that were, just really scared the hell out of them.
Right. Well, it's with three people, it's even weirder, because then it's like, this dude's probably lurking around out there. Like, it wasn't just one lady's weird encounter. I'd be wondering if you keep hearing more stories like over the years from people. Anyone who's listening that's in San Francisco, let us know if you run into this thing.
Right. I didn't mean to disparage your city. I'm sure it's a fine place.
Yeah.
But it's the Bay Area rapid transit system is. I mean, that's where everybody in my frame of reference here encountered the guy. I mean, what happened? Could it be maybe just a bad man who liked to dress as a priest died, while he was riding the train? I don't know. Maybe, it's some entity trying to prey on people who's just, figured that this is a place to do it on.
Yeah, I hadn't even given the ghost idea much thought, but now that you mention it, yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Sounded almost albino-like or something, too, with the eyes and the hair and everything, but who knows?
Right, and they all described his skin as really, really waxy, and it kind of had a sheen on it, not like he was sweating, but just like it was moist.
Ew. This guy's strange. That's just a creepy one. Just another reason why people don't want to use the subway.
Right, I don't like running into moist people on public transportation either.
Yeah. It's like keep the moist ones into their own car. All right, so that's the wicked priest story. Now, one tale that you've been sort of telling a lot over the last few weeks and months or so is this Harlequin tale, which has been up at From the Shadows and also the Mysterious Universe blog. Really creepy stuff. I mean, I don't know how you do it sometimes, dealing with all this creepiness. That's the thing with me. It's like, although I guess, we've talked about this in the past. There have been times when you've been like, all right, I've had enough of the creepiness. I can't do this anymore. But it's creepy stuff.
Right. I mean, there are some things that I have kind of abandoned. You're right. Which I think one of them you want to talk about later. But yeah, it's creepy's fun. I love creepy. I love scary movies. I love being scared. I love reading creepy stuff. I love writing creepy stuff. I like talking to people who have encountered creepy stuff. I don't like to encounter it myself. at all. I mean, I've had a couple of things happen in my life, and that's enough.
Yeah. So tell this Harlequin story.
Well, this just grew amazingly bizarre. I was contacted by a guy named Dan Mitchell just a couple of years ago, gosh, maybe 3 or 4 by now, who had been encountering something since he was a kid. He was like 5 years old. He lives in Wisconsin, and an entity, something would come into his room. It's shaped like a human. It was really thin. It was androgynous, and it was shaped. I mean, its face was pointed, but it had a round mouth, and it never had any other expression. That it just looked scared, or surprised. I think is what he said, surprised. And it had very, very large eyes and not very much of a nose. And this thing would come into his room. It was dressed in very motley clothes. He remembers it smelling like it just rained when this thing came into the room. And sometimes it would, be at his window. His bedroom was on the second floor. He said once he saw a hole in his wall that it stepped through. But he knows it talked to him, and it didn't use very many words. Mostly it talked through dance. It would dance for him, and he would know what it was trying to say. And he said it called itself the Tooth Fairy when he was really young. And I mean, it occurred, and he told his parents about it, and his parents, of course, didn't believe him. And years passed, 2, 3, 4 years passed, and the encounters kind of slowed down, but it still kept showing up. And he remembered once at dinner, they were sitting around having supper, and there was a noise from upstairs. Immediately in Dan's mind, he was thinking, "It's here. The Harlequin's upstairs, wondering where I am. It's searching for me." And he said his father, who had been, denying any of this had been happening to his son, let out just a loud moan and then a cackle.
Oh, God.
And froze. He just froze. And Dan said the next thing he remembers, he had no idea how much time passed, but he woke up and his face was in his plate. He had food all over his plate, his face, and the rest of his family had done the same. And when everybody kind of snapped out of whatever, hypnosis or whatever they were in and looked up, they just resumed eating like nothing had happened. And he has never gotten his father to admit that he's seen anything. He's asked him in the last couple of years, and his dad we won't talk about it. But from this point, his mother started getting really strange. His dad worked at night, and his mom had talked about dreams she'd had about a man dressed as a woman knocking on the door. She said a transvestite would knock on the door in my dream, and I'd open the door, and then I'd wake up. But it scared me. She started hearing rattling around in the basement. She knew somebody was there. She called the cops a number of times to come and look in the basement, and nobody was ever there. Just a bunch of weird things like that happened in the house. And when Dan, got around puberty age, 12, 13, 14, the thing just vanished. He didn't see it anymore until he was old enough to drive. And he and some friends they'd gone to a party at a friend's house, and Dan was driving them home, and they saw somebody walking, a girl walking, and she was walking like she was drunk. And one of the guys said, "Hey, I think I know who that is." And they got closer, and they noticed that it looked like a man dressed as a woman with a really bad red wig. And when they got close, it turned around, and he saw the Harlequin's face, the same big eyes, the scared or surprised expression on the face, and he just felt that it was furious with him. And they blanked out. And about 10 minutes later, all of a sudden everybody woke up, and they were a mile down the road. The guy sitting shotgun had wet his pants, and Dan took everybody home, and as soon as they got out of the car, they shot to their door. Because this just freaked the hell out of everybody.
Jesus.
Yeah, and he kept seeing this thing, every once in a while. Years would pass, he'd never see it. Once he remembered he and his dad had rented a cabin to go fishing, and they were heading into town from just out in BFE. And on the way, in the middle of nowhere on this gravel road, they saw this person dressed kind of like a woman, but they knew it was a man really wearing a really weird blonde wig and huge sunglasses, and it was after dark. They noticed this person pushing a baby carriage up the hill, and it was a gravel road. And the dad didn't want to talk about it, but of course Dan knew exactly what this was.
That's strange. It's like wayward clowns.
Well, you see, I've always been freaked out by clowns. This didn't help.
yeah, exactly.
And other encounters were, even a little weirder. He and his wife moved away and for a year or two, and then they came back, and they were moving in the same neighborhood, in the same block where their parents lived, where Dan grew up, and they knew the neighbors that they were moving in next to. They knew them really well, and when they moved in, the neighbors were like, Dan, this is the strangest thing happened. This man dressed as a woman. We were going to watch TV. We were cooking a pizza in the oven, and this person appeared in our kitchen. And she said that, I've got a key for the house next door, but it doesn't fit. But it fit in your door. Can you help me? Wow. And they told this person to leave because, of course, it scared the hell out of them. and they watched it leave and walk away, and never saw her get into a car or anything. She just kept walking. Dan saw that same sort of thing a couple of different times. He was cleaning stuff up in the basement of the house where him and his wife had just moved into, and he heard somebody rattling the door, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and he, kind of ignored it, and finally he went upstairs and saw a person walking away from the door, and it was this Harlequin, walking away. So, I mean, he knows this thing's been keeping tabs on him for years, and what really, really scared him, the first series of times I talked with him, what really scared him was that he had a 5-year-old kid who was telling him about the person who came in his room in the middle of the night and danced for him.
Oh, God, so, starts all over again.
Yeah, and I interviewed people who, experts in the Hopi religion, because this entity resembles Masao, one of their, a god in their mythology.
Yeah.
I talked with somebody who's familiar with Norse mythology, and this resembles Lokai and other various types of entities, and all these things are kind of generational. If something's screwing with somebody, it's going to screw with their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids. Which is, I'm speculating that's why Dad didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, because maybe it had been messing with him when he was a kid, and now he's
exactly.
Like, oh, God. That's just so weird, because you can't even, these are the kind of things, almost like the priest thing, you can't even really put these into a box, it's some kind of, it sounds to me like some kind of elemental being of some kind, like an elf-like creature of some sort. Was it short? Was it like a little diminutive?
Well, no, it wasn't tiny. I mean, it was an average size, maybe a 5'6", I'm guessing, something like that. It was just average. Wasn't really tall, wasn't really, really short.
Seems like also that it I wouldn't say embraces, but there's like an absurdity level to it, too. Like I said, it sounded like it was wayward clowns, like pushing a baby carriage on a gravel road. It's like the kind of foolish crap you expect from clowns to be doing.
Well, yeah, or foolish crap, or maybe, you mentioned elemental, maybe some different type of entity that's trying to fit in, trying not to be noticed, trying to mimic different things that it's seeing to try and fit in, but, since it doesn't know how humans think, how humans really act, it's getting a lot of things wrong.
Right, like a reverse Man in Black.
Right. Well, and this thing is not just with Dan Mitchell. Since Dan Mitchell's story came out, I spoke with, I can't remember his name. He's a councilman in England. He described seeing the same sort of entity, and I contacted him, and he's convinced that it was an extraterrestrial. I talked with a woman in Nebraska who saw an entity just like this, and a couple of women who were in Lawrence, Kansas a few years ago and encountered something exactly like this in the middle of the day that disappeared on an empty street when they turned their back and then turned back to look at it. I mean, and the thing was just gone. So some things like that. And I also talked with a woman in close to St. Louis, Missouri, who when she was in high school worked at a cigarette shop, liquor store. And a woman came in, she had a very pointed chin, very pale skin. She remembers her hands especially were the fingers were amazingly long and thin. She was wearing a big wig and huge sunglasses. She really didn't have much of a nose. And this woman came in, asked for a pack of cigarettes, took them and left. And this woman, who was a high school girl when she saw this, is convinced that she absolutely was not human. But it sounds a lot like this Harlequin character.
Yeah. The alien idea definitely has some sort of credence. I've heard weird stories like that where I think there's a guy talks about the tall white aliens or something like that, and how they go into Vegas and shit like that because they don't stand out when they look semi-human and.
Hey, who the hell doesn't want to see a giant white tiger disappear?
Exactly.
If I'm coming from Andromeda or where the hell ever, I want to see that.
because at first you're like, wow, those tigers they have down there are awesome. Then it's like, there's someone who can make them disappear? This planet's amazing.
Yeah, well, you had mentioned, you said this kind of sounded like, elves and things of that nature. I talked to Brad Steiger about this. He actually doesn't live that far from me. He lives up in Iowa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and anyway, I got a hold of him, and he was like, yeah, that's the Earl King, the Elf King. These beings have been doing this for, centuries upon centuries upon centuries, and they're still at it.
So weird. So weird. And this thing's usually like androgynous, I guess you could say, maybe, because it sounds like people seem to think it's a man in drag, but then other times it's a woman, maybe. Who knows? We don't,
Right. It's somebody you can't pin. You can't pin if it's a man or a woman, or an emo kid.
Yeah. Yeah. A twihard.
Right. So, and this kind of came to a culmination for Mitchell, because he got a feeling one morning that this thing wanted to talk with him.
Yeah.
And it told him where he wanted him to go. So he went. He went to a park to see this thing, and he said he was terrified. He duct taped his driver's license to the inside of his thigh, in case somebody found him dead in the park. His driver's license would be. I didn't ask him what happened when he ripped the duct tape off.
Oh, Jesus. This sounds like a Craigslist encounter.
Right, except for he lived. But anyway,
yeah.
No, he went to this park, and he said he sat in this on this bench for about 10 minutes, and was about ready to get up and leave, and then he felt that there was somebody behind him, and he was at first terrified to turn around, because he knew what was there, and eventually he did turn and peek over his shoulder, and he saw this thing, and it communicated to him, and it told him that it's older than he would ever know. He said that from the feeling he got that this thing had once been human, but kind of transcended its humanity. I'm really not sure how or where to place all this.
Yeah.
I mean, because this, sounds like an episode of the old Star Trek where, people are thought beings now. They used to be people, but, they transcended this. I don't know, maybe this shit was talking to Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah. Weird. Very weird stuff. Yeah. See, I had never even really heard these tales till you started talking about them recently, so kudos to you for bringing them out there,
Well, yeah, I love a good ghost story, a good UFO story, a good Bigfoot story, but these bizarre stories that people never hear are absolutely my favorite.
That's why I'm calling them Offutt's Oddities. Now, all right, so that's the Harlequin. Tremendous stuff. Tons of stuff on your blog about these stories. People want more of those. Now, as I noted, Darkness Walks was one of your big breakout books that everybody's still talking about. Everybody still loves that book. It's from Anomalous Books. How about just an update on the Shadow People research? Anything new going on there as far as, stories you've heard about the Shadow People? Are they doing anything different or new or weird, Shadow Kids or anything strange like that going on?
Well, not a lot of new stuff. I mean, I still talk to people about Shadow People encounters. People are, still having a lot of Shadow People encounters. The only, you mentioned kid, the only Shadow Kid story I've ever had, I got recently, and this woman was really defending her shadow person because she's got said she has a Shadow Kid who stays in her house and plays with the cats. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's like taking him in as her own little paranormal adoptee, if you will.
Which isn't bad if it keeps the cat occupied and you don't have to feed him.
Exactly, yeah.
That's good. No, I mean, Shadow People I've been fascinated with since I was about 8 or 9 years old because I saw these things walking through my room at night, and they just absolutely scared the hell out of me for good reason. And when I wrote my first Shadow Person story and put it on my blog, it was and still is the first story that got, I mean, it got me the most response of any story, because I didn't realize there were so many people out there who had encountered these entities.
Yeah, it seems pretty pervasive. And the more people talk about it, the more you hear about it and stuff, you know. It's like the Hat Man thing. I've heard so much about the Hat Man in the last few years. It's amazing.
Right. I just got finished working on an article. You mentioned Mysterious Universe. I just got finished working on one, and one of those stories is about the Hat Man. These guys, they were brothers, and when they were teenagers, they lived in the basement, which is always a fantastic place to sleep. And in this room where they slept, there was a Hat Man that they called the Cowboy, because they said he looked like the Marlboro Man. You know, those, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, or maybe that's just for the Midwest, but, you know, auto shops will cut out.
Yeah, I've seen those things. Yeah, like silhouettes, right?
Yeah, silhouettes of a cowboy. I mean, and it looked like that, except for it paced back and forth in front of their dresser, and it had blazing red eyes, and it would just pace and stare at them all night. And the Hat Man has this a lot more than any other type of shadow people encounter. It feels to the people encountering them that it's feeding off of the terror that it's, you know, forming in them just by its mere presence.
Weird.
Yeah, I'm glad mine didn't do that when I saw it, because you know, I peed the bed long enough. That would have kept me going for a while.
Yeah. That would have been a setback.
Mm-hmm.
Now, has anyone?
Nathan, why are you still peeing the bed? Demons in my room, Mom.
Now, I'm sure this was covered in the book, but my mind fails me because of far too much partying in college. So, have there been instances where people have communicated with these things in some sort of, you know, verbal way?
Very, very rarely. There have been people who talk to the shadow people, who tell them things, who yell at them, who pray at them, who laugh and sing at them, you know, to try and drive these things away, that get a reaction from shadow entities. It's been very rare that a shadow entity will actually talk with a person. If they do, maybe it's a name. You know, a shadow person speaking my name would, probably seize my heart up.
Yeah, that would be pretty freaky.
Yeah, there was one guy I talked with. His name is Mick. I can't recall his last name. He lives in Toronto, who encountered a shadow person dressed in a monk's cowl when he was about 18 years old. And the thing pinned him down and told him it was going to kill him.
Oh, God.
And it didn't. It took him on some, you know, wild spiritual ride that I've got detailed on my blog somewhere. That the guy felt, like I was saying, shadow people, you know, will, you know, tend to drain, if they're a negative kind, tend to drain your energy. And this guy felt himself being, you know, his life being sucked from him by this thing until eventually he snapped out of his grasp. But it told him. I mean, what could be scarier than that? Something blacker than night. Just a silhouette dressed as the Grim Reaper telling you it's going to kill you.
Yeah. I think I would just give up at that point. I'd be like, all right, dude, just make it quick, please. Yikes. These shadow people. There's some spooky creatures. Well, on the note of spooky creatures here, and you talked about how you kind of, seems like maybe you've walked away from the black-eyed kids. What's the latest on those little buggers?
Well, I keep getting reports on them for listeners who aren't really up on the whole black-eyed kids entity. They're generally between 6 and 7 years old, and anywhere from that age to early 20s. Most they're usually, you know, teens, 13, 14, 15, 16, but they can be younger or a little bit older, and they tend to approach people in you know, some personal space. Either they'll knock on the door of your house, they will tap on the window of your car as you're sitting there in a parking lot, or they will approach you, you know, on the street and ask you to come someplace. You know, when they you know, go to a car, they might ask you to, will you drive me to my house? I really need to get some money. Will you drive me here? Will you just let me in? Take me someplace. When there's a house, they'll knock on the window or knock on the door and say, I've got to use your phone. I got to call your mom. Sometimes it gets to the point to where the kids are saying, somebody's chasing me. You've got to help me. You've got to let me in your house.
Oof.
Okay, so they're very demanding. They're very well spoken. Everybody who encounters them say that they speak like an adult. Even the 6 or 7 year old black-eyed kids speak like they're an adult. And the people always feel, sort of, in some sort of hypnosis, like they feel like, yeah, I want to help this kid. But for some other reason they're scared, and then they, notice some things about the kids. They're usually either dressed in hoodies if they're in their teens, or they're dressed like 20 years out of date, and they're usually dirty, have bad breath, greasy hair, and they're taking all that stuff in. And then they notice the eyes, and the eyes are completely black. There's no whites, no irises. It's just black. Looking into voids, looking at a rat. Or anybody out there who's got kids and you've ever had those little people dolls. Those things freak me out because they're all black-eyed kids. Anyway, and that usually, when somebody notices the eyes, that's it. End of story, boom, slam the door, get the hell off my property, I never want to see you again. But they're all that, similar type of encounter.
Now, I also noticed in the blog there are some tales of black-eyed people. Are these essentially kind of the same thing, or are these more... It seemed like these were kind of weird encounters just with strange people at random in various places, almost like that priest story, but with a black-eyed person.
Well, right, yeah, these are, like I said, most of the stories of black-eyed, the black-eyed entities are kids. The kids can even, I even talked with a guy who had a nephew that he was sure was, it was some demonic little entity because, it would, even as, really smart as a toddler would try and turn bookshelves over on babies.
Oh God.
And, trip people downstairs and crap like that. And he said that one time the baby's mom picked him up after, it tried to do something like this, and the baby was looking at this man over his mom's shoulder, and he grinned, and then the eyes just went from blue to completely black.
Ew.
So, it's not, it can go from even that young, but what you're talking about is a little bit older. Yeah, a good example is a case out of Australia. I talked to the nurse from Brisbane, who a new woman from Sydney had just moved to town and was working at the hospital where she worked, and something just felt wrong about this woman. And but one day they were on shift together, and she had to find this woman. She couldn't find her. She went to the nurse's station, and they're like, well, I think she's down past the cafeteria. So she kept asking people she saw on the way, where Julia, I don't remember what her name was, I'm just going to call her Julia, where Julia was, and they pointed back finally to a bathroom that's way back in the back of the hospital. And this woman walks back to this bathroom, and she sees this other nurse who creeps her out standing in the middle of the bathroom. And she says, Julia, and the woman turns around and looks at her, and the eyes are just, like ink has poured over the banks.
Oh, God.
It's just black, and this woman's staring at her. And the woman starts to smile, and the nurse I was talking to just got the heck out of there and took the next week off. And
weird.
By the time she came back to work, the Julia, the new creepy nurse had left. But that black-eyed people, they're not. These encounters aren't just for kids. It could be about anybody.
Makes you almost wonder, like this Julia character. Maybe she's like, we've talked about how, you have no stories where someone actually lets the black-eyed kids in. Maybe that's kind of like the end result. You end up, they end up becoming a part of you somehow or something like that.
Right, or I've had people speculate to me that maybe all of these cases where, people who are normally healthy and die of, in quotes, natural causes in their house, maybe they'll let a black-eyed person in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was so into black-eyed kids a couple of years ago. I was planning on writing a book about it. I remember when Mac Tonys died, because I'd known Mac for a couple of years. I'd interviewed him a number of times, had coffee with him, and that's the first thing that crossed my head. Maybe let a black-eyed kid in.
Weird, yeah.
And at that point, I was like, I need to back off.
Yeah, because they could be coming to your door next.
Yeah, that's one of the things my wife said. She goes, you can write about any of this stuff, but if one of those comes to my door, it's your ass.
Well, have there been, I think we may have talked about this, but I'm not sure. Has anyone ever gotten a picture of one of these things, or you can't really tell nowadays anyway with the internet and Photoshop and...
No, people ask, a lot of things that I write about. I have people that will post comments on my blog. They'll email me, asking, I'm not going to believe this unless I can see a picture. And I always respond with, I'm not going to believe it if I see a picture.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, because I teach photojournalism at my university. I know what you can do with Photoshop. Some of our film students, what they can do with computer programs nowadays is just amazing. So I don't trust any still or video photography. I mean, it's kind of sad, but I can't.
No, it's weird. I was talking about this with somebody in a previous interview here for season 7. It's like this weird sort of modern paradoxical problem of the paranormal, where it's like what once was such a great piece of evidence for us, being the photograph, now has been rendered impotent, essentially.
Exactly. I think just recently Nick Pope said that he saw some photograph that was, it was proof. He knew that was an extraterrestrial craft, and then the British Ministry of Defense destroyed it. Well, and this was, a couple of decades ago. Well, yeah, sure, at that point, that's believable, but yeah, today, I mean, any credibility whatsoever is destroyed.
Yeah.
Just like any Bigfoot picture you see, just discount it.
Exactly, yeah. Somehow even the Bigfoot pictures still remain terrible. It's like, no one can come up with a good one.
Is, even the ones that are really great, you can't, I mean, they're like the one recently that there was a hunter's camera, it took a picture, a trail cam took a picture of the back of a Bigfoot.
Oh yeah, I saw that, yeah.
That looked freaking amazing.
There's
no way in hell that's true.
Exactly, yeah. It was both awesome and highly suspect.
Highly.
I've heard so much about the black-eyed kids since the last time we talked. It seems like it really resonates with a lot of people. Like even after our last interview, I got a lot of feedback and continuously mentioning the black-eyed kids. Freaks people out.
Well, and there's a great reason that it freaks people out. I mean, as an adult, don't you feel, I think every adult probably feels this way. I mean, if they see a kid that's in some kind of trouble, they need some kind of help, I mean, you feel immediate empathy. You want to help that kid. And then all of a sudden, you look and you find out that this kid that you were just about ready to help, just about ready to let into your house, give it a cookie and a glass of milk while you called the police to come and rescue it, you just realized it's an effed up little monster.
Yeah.
Instead of this, sweet little street urchin who was in trouble. I mean, because it's little kids take people's guards down. And then, when they realize that, this is unknown, this is dangerous. That's very, very appealing to people. I mean, it's like, watching The Exorcist live in your own house.
We could only sell tickets.
I wonder if there's been a Exorcist musical done, and that would be nice.
That would be nice, yeah. With
a pea soup splatter zone. I gotta start this. I'm gonna bring this up.
Yeah.
If this comes up, any listeners, that's my idea.
Yeah, we don't want. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna end up hearing in a couple months some off-Broadway production of The Exorcist. We're like, what the fuck? Let's find that guy. You heard it from our show. All right, now, speaking of sort of evil, diminutive beings, another story that you mentioned when we were setting up the interview that you thought was particularly chilling, and I read it and was tremendously tweaked out, and that's the evil little man saga, which you detailed at the blog over the course of several blog posts. So talk about this sort of like gnome-like creature that was terrorizing this farm.
Yeah, this story. Well, and this goes to a story that I don't ever tell people because I was massively sleep deprived when this happened. When I was 17 years old, I actually worked at Royal Stadium as a food vendor, and I was driving home one night. It was really late, and I was staying at my grandma's that night for some reason. And when I parked my truck, and I got out, I looked across the street. And the neighbor across the street had garden gnomes sitting underneath a bush. And they kind of caught my eye because they were moving. The arms and legs were moving. And I'm like, yeah, I need to go to bed. But and I know that's sleep deprivation, but those type of garden gnomes with the little pointed hats, little red pointed hats, and a little green or gold jacket, are, based on things from Europe. The Tomtar, I think is their name, is a gnome entity from Sweden. I interviewed a guy whose grandma was from Sweden and would regale him with stories about the bad things these little Tomtars did around the house. If you didn't lay out, food for them. But anyway, the story is based in California, by the Tule River. It's Tule, I believe. This woman and her kids moved into this farmhouse, and there were a number of houses on the property, and a shed that was really close to the house, and a river went through the property, and they would like to go down to the river, and the dogs would splash around, and the kids would throw sticks in, and whenever they walked back to the house, walking by this shed really creeped them out, and the dogs would always bark at the shed. Well, they would notice later that things that they had brought, animals they brought, some ducks, chickens, and cats, they all disappeared. Had no idea what happened to them. And then one night, it was an early evening, the mom came home, her and her son, who was about 7 at the time, got out of the car, and the mom was about ready to grab her bag of groceries, and she heard a cackle. And she looks over, and by this shed is one of these garden gnome-looking guys, between 2 and 3 feet tall, pointed red hat, gold shirt, brown pants, pointed needle-like teeth, in a mouth that she said covered the entire, across the entire face, and it was staring at her, laughing. And she just, screw the groceries, she grabbed her kid, ran in the house.
Yeah.
And this thing, let out a bellow, and she knew it was following her, but she didn't turn around to look. But she got into the house, slammed the door. Her daughters were in there, like, what's going on? And she said, just get down. Well, the first story of the house was, up a porch. So it was, the windows in the kitchen were like 10 feet off the ground. And she said she could see this red pointed hat sticking up in the window, which absolutely terrified her. And she'd hear it just chattering outside. She had no idea what it was saying. Eventually it went away. She went outside, got the groceries, and they moved out of the house very, very soon afterward. This story is scary enough. But I got a story a couple of years later from a woman who described a similar house right outside the same town, right beside the same river. There was a shed next to the house that really creeped her and her husband out. Her and her husband had 2-year-old twins and a golden retriever. They dug up a pond, and they dug a koi pond, and they put little garden gnomes, little concrete garden gnomes around it, and little toadstools, and they hated walking by that shed. And the dog barked like the other one did, and they started noticing that their koi, the fish, were disappearing. They figured that raccoons or things were eating it, and they noticed that the garden gnomes and toadstools would be moved around. And one night when they put the kids to bed, and they were in the living room, the dog was sleeping on the floor, and they heard a cackle from outside. They looked out, and they'd installed an outside light over the koi pond, and they looked, and there was this exact gnome creature standing by the pond. And when it saw them looking at them, it reached in the pond, grabbed a fish, and bit its head off.
Ew. Like as a message?
Like, I think it was a message. They called the sheriff's department, and all they said was, we have an intruder. And the sheriff came out and looked around, and they're like, there's nothing here. I mean, there's some kids' footprints around the pond, but that's it. And they knew that was, from the gnome, that gnome creature, that was its footprints. Well, later, and this was probably one of the creepier parts of the encounters that they had with it, was that one day they heard a cat screaming from inside the shed, and they'd never gone in the shed because it creeped them out so much. Well, they were both Iraq War veterans. They were both in the military, and the husband was like, screw this. If there's a cat being hurt, I've got to get it. So he opened up the door and with a flashlight looked in the shed, and there was a cat that had been half skinned.
Ew.
Laying in the shed, and it was still alive. And the guy was just freaked out, and he went to get something to put the cat in. He was gone, he said, for maybe a minute and a half. And when he looked back in the shed, the whole thing was gone.
Ew,
and it couldn't have gone anywhere by itself.
Jesus. See, these stories that make me think that there are these sort of creatures, living amongst us in a way.
Well, I mean, I've gotten similar stories, not just from that place. I mean, I got the two families hooked up, and they went because they weren't sure that they lived in the same house. I got the two wives hooked up, and they went out there and looked, and sure as hell they lived in the same house. So they were talking about the same creature. But I've gotten similar stories out of Liberty, Missouri, out of Albany, New York. But think about and one out of upstate New York. A couple of years ago, I talked with a guy who, when he was a kid, he was staying with his grandma, and during a storm one night, he heard a scream outside the window, and he was sleeping with his grandma because he was afraid of the lightning, and he's like, "Grandma, what's that?" And she's like, "Don't worry about it. Just forget you heard it." And he went to sleep, and he got up the next morning, couldn't find Grandma, went out, and she was on the front porch, and with a mop, and she was cleaning up, and he remembers seeing these tiny human footprints on the porch that she was mopping up. And I looked into this, and there are Native American legends from that area of tiny people who cause storms and scream during storms of that nature. And there's stories of trolls, gnomes, goblins, elves all over Europe, things in Russia, things in Africa. I mean, these stories of diminutive entities are everywhere.
I like how they haven't really changed, with how they're still sort of wearing the outfits that were when they.
Yeah, pointed hat, really, red pointed hat, seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, don't you like having Yankees cap you can wear backwards?
It's like, dude, go down the baby gap. Just come on. We want to accept you into our society, but you need to stop dressing that way.
Right, and get a Social Security number. Start paying your damn taxes.
But yeah, it does. It's interesting too, because it's funny because what we do, we're in this sort of weird field and stuff, and I'm sure if I told somebody like where I work that last night I was doing an interview for my show, and we were talking about real life dwarves and gnomes and stuff, and they would never believe you that these things that these stories are out there. But they are. It's the amazing part.
Well, and it's, the more I talk to people, the more research that I've done on different paranormal things, I felt the same way. I mean, it's like thinking back, when I first started this, gnomes, really? Are you freaking kidding me? Gnomes.
Yeah.
I can kind of picture Bigfoot, I can see that as an unclassified, North American ape, maybe so, but a gnome? And after talking to people and getting these stories, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Gnome.
It's like, yeah, dude, they're out there, and they're not just like from the 1700s in Ireland or whatever. These aren't just like European stories, you know.
Nope. They're out there, they're in your neighborhood, and they're pissed.
That would be, that maybe we need to make that into the musical, because that's a great tagline.
Yeah.
That would really freak people out. This next story really intrigued me, I guess is the best way to put it, is the tale of the Fey Girl, which I thought was just so bizarre. Like, again, it's like it goes back to this thing about the gnomes. It's like if you had told me that there was somebody out there who claims that he was involved with you know, a descendant of the fairy folk, I'd be like, get the hell out of here. But then you read the story, and it's like, I want to know more about this. So tell me more about the tale of the Fey Girl.
Right, yes. Getting into this, I'm like, I want to know more, but then again, I want to know less. This man was chatting with a woman on a dating site, and they hooked up. I mean, they chatted, and she started to tell him that, you know, these stories about that she was like 1/4 fairy. It's like, okay, that's cool. You're still hot. So they decided to meet, and it was like the round trip from where he was. I mean, it was like 1,800 miles, something like it. It was like 900 miles one way, and he drove to southern Missouri, where this woman is. He said there's like a Fey community down there, and he went down to meet her, and she claimed to be descended from fairy folk, from elves, or whatnot, and anyway, he meets her for the very first time, and he's just struck by her just unnatural beauty, and they spend the next 2 days in a motel room just doing it. And he just said it was extremely bizarre because he never felt tired. And he said that's all they did, and after they were over, it was like, okay, we'll see you later. And they still continued to chat, and while he was back home, chatting with her, she seemed to know things that she shouldn't know, like where he'd left something in his house. He had a friend who, had cancer, and I guess he'd mentioned it to her, and, not a week later, he was talking with her, and he's like, hey, yeah, she's gone into remission, and she's like, okay, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Other weird things that happened to him that she acted like she was in control of, and he was pretty sure she was because she couldn't have really known about it.
Yeah.
And he said that these Fae tend to, live around each other, and they take jobs at odd times of night. This girl delivered newspapers, which you do that at 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
Why is that?
Not dealing with regular humans.
Okay. Interesting. Now, what about this Fey community? Have you been down there to check it out? Do you know anything about that at all?
Oh, I want nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Why are you frightened of the Fays? They sound adorable.
Nice. Because you were mentioning elementals, right. and the Fae have things in common with the elementals is that they don't really, at least according to people who claim to be in air quotes here in the know. God, I hate giving air quotes on an interview. Anyway, but they don't feel human emotion like we do. Yeah. They're intrigued by it. They're curious about it. They want to experience it, but they just don't. And that's what this guy encountered. He drove, the 900 miles one way like 4 times in 4 months just to hang out with this girl and spend 2 entire days having sex. They said the last time he went down there, it was just all of a sudden. There's just a switch that flipped. She wanted nothing to do with him. Nothing at all. They went out on her paper route. She wouldn't let him touch her. They ran out of gas when they were on the route, and the car died. And he's like, "Well, you want me to watch for gas?" She goes, or to walk for gas. I'll just grab a gas can and go. And she's like, it's not necessary. She started the car, and they drove like 5 miles to the next gas station. And he said that, good things happened when he was with her, but she told him that bad things would happen without her protection. So, I don't want any of that stuff.
Weird. Very strange. I'd like to contact this girl for some of this weekend-long sex.
Well, yeah, and she sounds hot, too. So
yeah.
It's a double bonus.
Yeah. It's one of those rare, love on the internet stories that, well, I guess, it didn't turn out totally well. They kind of break up, I guess, but, still. She didn't turn out to be a man.
Not always a bad thing.
So it's always, yeah, exactly. Very weird. And I remember the story from the blog said that she said that, her grandfather had sex with a fairy or something like that, and that's how she had the Fey blood, if you will, or something along those lines, right?
It's like my grandfather was Gandalf or some shit. Yeah, something like that.
So weird.
I don't mean to make light of that.
No, I mean, I'm still all about the Fey, so...
No, I just didn't want to piss any Fey off.
That's what I mean, yeah. I endorse the Fey. I'd like to meet one. So if there's any Fey out there, contact me. So she just kind of just ended it with this guy. Was he okay afterwards, or did bad things happen to him? And I didn't write about this. I don't think I did. Just because of the nature of it, he had, on the way home from this last encounter that she had, where she had basically broken things off, he was driving home, and all of a sudden bad stuff kind of started happening to him. Bad stuff at work. He didn't feel well. He came down with this horrible, he came down with a sickness. And he kept trying to talk to this Fey girl online, and eventually, she responded back to him, and she's like, you were vulnerable. I had let you go. Something dark saw you on the road and hitched a ride with you, and now it's messing with you. I will, I'll get rid of this for you. But after this, don't contact me again. Jesus.
And he was okay after that.
Weird. How long ago was all this? Well, they met online, so it couldn't have been that long ago.
Oh, it was like 5 years maybe. I'm estimating here, but I don't think it was any farther than that.
Jesus. So weird. So weird.
So weird or normal. I mean, go back 400 years, or go to today's Iceland, where they, plan construction over, around fairy sites.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not so weird there.
I know. Wow. Hadn't thought about that, but yeah. Yeah.
And I grew up thinking they just fix shoes.
So, maybe if you're out on see, all the people I encounter on the graveyard shift, they're people that, they seem like they belong on the graveyard shift. So
they're people with something called a record.
I used to be a graveyard shift janitor, and they used to call the shift Siberia. That's what they'd send all the janitors that couldn't, for a variety of sordid reasons, could not work in the daytime. So it was like they would ship you, because you can't fuck with the union, of course, so they would ship you off to Siberia, which is the overnight shift. So
right, can you work in the day? No, wait a second, your skin burst into flames. So yeah.
Yeah, like one guy had a tattoo of a naked woman on his forearm, and they're like, around the children, that doesn't work.
At Pierce Elementary School, I think maybe we should keep the naked woman covered up.
Yeah. Put him on the Siberia shift. All right, so that's the tale of the Fey girl. Now, this next story actually has a banal connection. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's the time-traveling tourist story.
I did not know this had a banal connection.
At the end, in the update part, you say that. I'll just tell the banal connection part, and then you can. I'm the one that posted it on the Coast to Coast website.
Oh, okay, absolutely, yeah.
I couldn't believe it, because I was reading the article, and I was like, I actually went back to check, and I was like, yeah, I did. I'm the one that put that up there. That's so weird. And then, that turns into a whole other twist to the story. But I guess, tell this, I'm fascinated. I know you are, too. I'm fascinated by time travel and time travelers and the potential behind all that.
Oh, I always have been. But tell me the truth first. You were reading the post, and you're like, fucking off, it didn't mention me.
No. No, because I wasn't even sure if I did that or not. I had to go back and check because I didn't want to take credit for something I didn't do. So, but no, I mean, it's fascinating, and first of all, before we get into the time travel story, did this come from the Time Traveler Reporting Center?
No, and this maybe I haven't advertised it as much as I should have, because I've been fascinated since I was a little kid. I think everything goes back to Star Trek, but that's irrelevant right now. Even though it is William Shatner's birthday today, so it's not irrelevant.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been fascinated by this, by this topic forever. Time Travel Reporting Center. It's because I've gotten a lot of, really great time travel stories over the years. I've got a couple from people who, they're, basically the same story, but they're still really cool. Of guys, they stop someplace. One guy was in Texas, I remember. He was getting gas, and a man in a suit that, looked like a pretty normal business suit, but it was a little bit off. There's something different about it. Just walked out of the bathroom and started screaming, "What year is it?"
Oh, Jesus. Almost like he went in and came out at the wrong time. Yeah,
something like that. And when the guy was like, "Okay, it's 2007, he's like, "What? It's 2007? No!" So, that makes pay at the pump really freaking cool when you can get away with somebody screaming no at you who's pissed off that they're in the wrong year. But I got stuff like this. I also talked with a guy who was working at a really old winery in Oregon, and he had to go in the basement to get something. And he went in the basement, and it was it's been redone. The building's really old, but it was redone, and it's a hotel and a winery, and all sorts of fancy events are there, weddings and whatnot. And he went in the basement to get some wine, and the basement was empty. And there was water dripping from the ceiling, and there was wood rot everywhere, and he just was freaking out because he went from room to room that he'd already been in before, where the wine was. He knew there was wine, and he knew there wasn't water dripping from places, and he knew the wood was fresh. And it was just he was freaking out, and he walked back up the stairs that were creaky stairs. And walked back up into the hotel, and he was fine, and he grabbed somebody, and he went back downstairs, and downstairs as he had remembered it before. The stairs were fairly new, and there was no water, and the wine was where it was supposed to be, and everything. But he's sure that he stepped backward into time when this building had been abandoned for decades. But I'm fascinated by those stories. I keep getting them, and I'm like, I want to have a place where people who have encountered their own personal time slip, or have encountered somebody like the big man in the weird suit screaming, "What year is it?" I want a place for them to tell their experiences to the world, and nobody's done it.
People, you gotta send these in. I love time travel stories. I find them so bizarre. Although now I'm tempted to go to like a consignment shop and get like an old timey sort of like 70s outfit and just be that guy for a while.
Just go stew.
Yeah, and just go into bathrooms and come out and be like, "What year is it?"
Or the Bee Gees still relevant?
That could be, that might help meeting women too. You could be like, "I'm from the past." You're not lying, though. We're all really from the past, in a sense. So.
We're all technically time travelers.
Yeah, just very slowly.
Yeah.
So what's the story of the time traveling tourists?
Well, back in 2006, a man named Ken Helbling walked into Barnes & Noble. It was raining. He went in. He's like, I got nothing else better to do. Sunday morning, I'm not going to church. So I'm going to go and get some coffee and look for a book. And he went in, and he was waiting in line to get coffee, and there was tall man in front of him. He said he was older, about 65 years old, wearing a red flannel shirt and blue jeans. And when it was his turn for coffee, the guy said, well, I don't have a discount card, but can I use my sister's? And the barista said, yeah, sure, why not? And this guy didn't have the card. He just rattled off like 17 numbers in a row without reading it off anything.
Oh, God.
And that was, the barista was feeding him into the computer, and yeah, that number was okay, and he got his discount. But as he was waiting behind this dude, he noticed that there was two high school girls, a blonde and a brunette, that were standing close to him and staring at him. And he said they were wearing like Jordache jeans, and they had the big 80s hair.
So now, did it seem like they were with him, or were they just sort of intrigued by him?
Well, he thought that he just had the feeling that these two girls and the older guy in the red flannel shirt were together.
Okay.
Well, I think they eventually walked off together, so that kind of just solidified that. But and it said it was really weird because they looked familiar to him. He said they looked about 17, but they looked like a couple girls that he knew in high school, and he didn't want to stare at them because he didn't want to be a creeper. He also, he thought about saying, hey, where did you get those retro clothes? Because, the jeans, he said, they look brand new, or their clothes look brand new, but they were from like the 1980s. And he kind of just dismissed it. He went and got his coffee and went to browse books. And then he picked up a book and he started to look at it, and he looked over and the girls were still there, had followed him, and they were staring at him. So he put the book up and left because he was kind of creeped out at this point. And so the next week he went and did the same thing. And next Sunday, same time of day, he, went back to Barnes & Noble. And when he walked into the coffee area, the same guy, dressed in the same red flannel shirt and blue jeans, was standing there ordering a coffee, spouting the same, insanely long number off the top of his head to get a discount on the coffee. And the two girls were there too, but they were wearing the same clothes and they had the same big hair, and they were standing there, drinking coffee, staring at him. And when he went back to find the book he'd looked at the week before, he wandered around, didn't see them, and he stood there looking at the book. And when he turned around, the two girls were sitting on the floor looking at him. And when they saw him looking at them, they put their books over their face and like, oh crap, he's seen us, let's hide our eyes. And he's like, wow, screw this. I'm going to buy my book and just go home. And when he got home, he started reading the book. And at some point in the book, some of the people in the book became tourists who were traveling in time to tour different eras, and he was like, damn.
Yeah.
I think this just happened to me.
That's so weird, because it's like, you wonder, they weren't like, well, they couldn't have been people he knew in high school, because they would have to have time traveled from when he was in high school, and that seems unlikely. So. Right,
he said, they did, they look, he said the one was blonde, one was brunette. He said the blonde one looked exactly like the girl that he knew in high school.
Weird.
The brunette looked nearly the same, but she was a lot taller. And he thought maybe initially when he first saw them that, hey, maybe this is Alicia and Amy's daughters. And now he's like, maybe it's their granddaughters or their great-granddaughters or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, now let's get to the banal part of the story.
I play such a minimal role in that. I never should have mentioned that.
Well, no, because it's pretty cool. He had this Helbing got a hold of me later. Much later. The story was on the Coast to Coast website. A link was, and he called his brother who lives in Connecticut to say, hey, I just had a story about me has been on the Coast to Coast website. And the guy's like, his brother's like, yeah, I know. You contacted me, like a month ago telling me about it. And he said, how did I contact you? His brother said, well, you sent me an email. And this guy knows that he hadn't sent his brother an email in like a year. And he hadn't called him for about a month. But his brother told him everything that was in the story. And he was kind of freaking out, and his brother is works in the computer industry, and went back and looked at everything he could, and he's like, yeah, I didn't get an email from you. I have a link to the story before it was published in my browser history, but yeah, there's nothing that tells me that you sent it to me. So if you hadn't done that, Tim, I wouldn't have had that.
I added another element to the story.
Yeah, so you posted the story 2 weeks before it actually was on my blog.
Maybe I have some kind of time connection. It sounds more like this guy has some kind of weird time, like he gets unstuck in time somehow. But who knows?
I don't know. If I'm getting stuck in time, it's not going to be the 80s.
Only if you can gamble like Biff Tannen or whatever his name is from the Back to the Future movies.
Yeah, Biff Tannen, nice pulling that out.
Yeah.
Pulling out the Back to the Future 2 reference. That never gets referenced.
If I just one day wake up and there's like a giant Offutt, sports complex that you've, restaurant, casino that you've designed over there, although you become unstuck in time.
Yeah, and, you can come have free beer.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it's all good.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what do you make of these time travel stories? Makes you wonder, that maybe there are these time travelers running around sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because one of the benefits of teaching at a university is that I get to hang out with physicists. I get to go, we can have dinner, sit at a bar, have a beer, next to physicists and farmers at the next table. So, I mean, it's just, we talk about time travel and physicists, one of the reasons they become physicists is because, hey, time travel's awesome. And, I've talked about, the reality of time travel and the fact that, yeah, theories are out there that it can actually happen. Supposedly we can't do it yet, but I mean, there's so many stories that I've encountered about, things that are time travel related that, I think there's got to be something, Tim.
Yeah. It's weird. I've heard quite a few stories. You remember the one about the stockbroker that was I think they arrested him and they said he was a time traveler or something like that? That happened.
Is this the guy who had a passport from a country that didn't exist?
No, I've never heard that one before. Weird.
Oh yeah, this is a guy who when was he? He flown into Japan and he was really freaked out because he gave his passport that everything was in order and he'd been to Japan before because it was stamped in, but he was from a country that nobody ever heard of. And, he was, questioned and detained for a while, and they eventually, let him go under surveillance, and he, disappeared from his hotel room.
Weird.
Yeah, this is something I read in the last year.
So strange. Well, there's two different types of time stories. It's the time slip story, and then the time, time travelers. It's I don't know if time travel fascinates me and frightens me in the sense of the fear of getting stuck somehow. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I don't know, getting stuck somewhere.
Stuck sometime.
It's I have no idea because people when they think of time travel about how cool it would be have absolutely no idea the reality of what it would be like to be in a different time. Right. If you go back in time past the 1904 Pure Food and Drug Act, might have been 1906, you wouldn't be able to eat because you'd be throwing up the whole time. I mean, you're going to be going back into times when their food was. I mean, your system is not designed anymore. We've been. We are not tough. We're not tough individuals. We can't eat, spoiled meat and still survive. I mean, right. Without vomiting our guts up.
Right. And it's even now you look at how technologically pampered we are. Can you imagine even just time traveling back to the 70s or something?
Well, I could because I live there. Farrah Fawcett was awesome.
So you actually long to travel back to the 70s?
Oh, no, I'd rather go to the future.
That would be good. It would be interesting to see. Like I said, though, I mean, the story about the guy coming out of the bathroom. It's did he ever go back to where he came from? Or is he the guy that's always hanging around in the gas station bathrooms?
Yeah, there's always one.
Yeah. It's like I'm trying to get back to 1950.
You can tell.
Sure.
You can tell the time travelers in gas station bathrooms. They're the ones who are not dragging a key connected to a muffler or a big block of wood. Yeah.
You're listening to Banal of America Audio.
I don't know if have I ever told you my, I don't know if it's a time slip, time travel, missing time. Have I ever told you my time story?
No, I don't think I've heard your time story.
Okay, I was driving home from work, at the newspaper when I used to work in the industry, and on Saturday nights I had the late shift, and I'd drive home, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I lived like 50 miles away from Kansas City, so it was a heck of a drive. But I was driving home, and I got to this spot that said there was a road sign that said the name of my hometown, 5 miles. Okay, and I was driving. I had the cruise control set. It was 55 miles an hour. I had the cruise control set, and as soon as I passed that sign, the radio started playing my favorite Rolling Stones song, "Gimme Shelter."
All right.
Which is like 4 minutes, 26 seconds long. And I thought, great, I'll be able to listen to this all the way home. And I kind of got road hypnosis. And I woke up from my road hypnosis, and because the cruise control was dragging. I'm like, crap, this shouldn't be, because I'm on a flat stretch of road. There's no way for my cruise control to be dragging. And I looked, and I was going up a hill.
Oh, weird.
And it was really foggy. And I kicked off the cruise control, and I just drove, and I went up and down 2 more hills until I saw a light through the fog. And I pulled in, and it was Jehovah's Witness Church on a gravel road. Well, I pulled in there and turned around, and seeing the Jehovah's Witness Church, I knew exactly where I was. I was 5 miles past my hometown.
Huh.
So I'd driven 10 miles, and as I sit there, I realized, I was thinking, what the hell happened to me? And I realized, hey, Gimme Shelter's still on. And it was on for another minute and a half.
Weird.
So somehow, I went, 10 miles, not knowing it, in, like 3 minutes.
That's odd. That is weird. The fog has something to do with it, I think.
Maybe so. I have no idea. I can't claim to know anything that happened, or if anything paranormal happened, or I have no idea. I'm not laying claim to knowing anything that happened. I'm just saying I have no idea what it was.
It's a lot of these stories seem to happen involving driving. I'm sure you've heard these kind of stories. I wouldn't call them like kind of like, for lack of a better term, like phantom rest stop type things. Where people will pull in and eat at a little diner, and it'll seem kind of weird, and then the next time they're driving, it won't be there anymore, kind of stuff. Yeah,
I've heard stories like that. But yeah, driving, a lot of weird stuff happens. Well, Betty and Barney Hill were driving.
Exactly. Now, I know that for What Lurks Beyond, you looked into the Madman Markham story. Any update on that? Have we heard from him since the book came out?
Yeah, it was really, I just really felt great doing this. And I'll have to thank my readers at From the Shadows, because somebody said, hey, I know how to get a hold of him. And I got a hold of Mike Markham, and found out what has happened to him, ever since he disappeared. Because he disappeared. The last time he was on Art Bell was like 1998. And after that, nobody heard from him. Which was in my book. I talked with friends of his in St. Joseph, and they're like, no, he just disappeared. No goodbye, no Christmas card the next year, nothing. He was just gone. Which is bizarre, because he was building this time machine,
right,
out of a Jacob's ladder, so he had enough electricity to fry him into, dust that he was planning on jumping through. So, disappearing, yeah, I could kind of see that. But no, I tracked him down, and he's living in Cincinnati, which is where he was from to begin with. what had happened is he got money. People started, because of his exposure on Coast to Coast AM back in the 90s, people started donating money to him. And he was able to rent a warehouse in Kansas City and build a, big model of his time machine. And he practiced, on the time jump by throwing grapefruit through.
Yeah.
And the grapefruit would disappear. And he would go out in the parking lot, and it would, reappear in various different parts of the parking lot. Because something that people don't get about time travel, which is really kind of scary, if you build a time machine and you jump through it and you actually go 10 years in the future, where do you land?
Right, because it's like the Earth's rotating, that kind of thing.
The Earth's rotating, the galaxy, the Milky Way's rotating, our galaxy's rotating, our solar system, rotating. So we'd be in the middle of space.
Yeah. Ooh, creepy.
Yeah, so, that it would disappear and reappear someplace else. He threw a hamster in that lived.
Oh, good.
Yeah, well, not the first one, but the second one did. So he decided that he videotaped all of this stuff. And he decided, it's time. He had notes. He had everything written down. All of his equipment was there. All of his videotapes were there. And he's like, people are going to have this. We're going to have this. I'm going to be able, to have all this knowledge of this time machine and show the world. And he jumped through. And he woke up in a field, in Cincinnati, Ohio. He said it was winter. And he just woke up. He had no idea who he was, had no idea where he was. It was out there, of course, outside the city. And he started walking. Somebody found him. He went to a homeless shelter for a while. Eventually, he started remembering who he was and what had happened. And after 2 years, he went back to, he had enough money to go back to Kansas City, and the warehouse was empty. All of his stuff was gone.
Oh, God. Weird. And now he's back in Cincinnati.
He's back in Cincinnati, yeah.
And he has no idea who took all his stuff.
Nope, not a clue. No, he said he tried to get a hold of a couple of his benefactors who had given him money and has not been able to find them. Yeah, he said that he wanted to, he would be interested in resuming his experiments if he had the cash, but he doesn't. I actually wrote an article for Nexus magazine a couple of years ago about this, and there's some people in England who got a hold of me who were interested in helping him out financially, and I hooked them up and really, did a bad job following up. I haven't checked back with him for, since then.
Strange. Now, how does he know, given that he was all, disoriented, does he know sort of, how much time elapsed between the leap, I guess you could say? I'm a big Quantum Leap fan, so I guess I get glad to get that in there. But from the leap from Kansas City to Cincinnati,
it was. He's pretty sure it was a year or two.
So, he went in, came out 2 years later in Cincinnati.
Yeah. When I talked to him, he said, "I'm 37 years old officially, but actually I'm only 35."
Weird. Holy shit. See, that's when you need a cohort who's going to stick around in the warehouse. It's to pay the rent and shit while you're in the future.
Yeah, it's nice to have friends.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Could you cover my back if I disappear and go into the future? That would be awesome.
Then again, yeah. Then that person probably ends up on trial for murder or something. Till you show up 2 years later.
He probably had somebody, and you can see him when Markham disappeared, just kind of slink away.
Yeah, it's it's been a week. He's not coming back.
Yeah.
I gotta get the hell out of here before people start asking questions. Very weird. Well, that's an interesting twist on the story. I'd never heard this update on the Madman Markham story. Very weird.
Well, I'm the guy who broke the update, so you're hearing it here first, folks.
Nice. That's why we have Offutt on for Offutt's Oddities. What about this terror in the shopping mall? I'm a big fan of malls, so this story kind of stood out to me because this sounds like a very creepy sort of old-timey mall that has a presence in it.
Yeah, the mall. Yeah, I've been a big fan of malls for a long time because where'd I hang out in high school? At the mall. Used to go watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show at midnight during the summer at the mall. And the mall I went and hung out with has got like 4 stores now.
Yeah.
It looks like the zombie apocalypse already happened. Yeah. I talked to the woman. The mall had been built in the 70s, like where all the malls were, popular back then. She worked in this mall starting in 2005 at a retail clothing store. And it was, just a job. She was assistant manager. A few things started happening, just minor things at first. If everybody had gone home, she'd be, working on the books, and she'd hear hangers rattling. And she'd go check, and there wouldn't be any hangers rattling. There'd be nobody in the store. She started hearing footsteps on the tile floor when she was there alone, and she'd go look, and nobody'd be there. Now, this sort of thing kind of creeped her out, but she kind of ignored it because it didn't harm her. Strange things started escalating. People who worked for her started feeling, saying that they, in this one corner of the store, they just felt sad. The store just felt sad, in this corner. People who were trying on clothes in the back of the changing room started complaining that, somebody's slamming the door, somebody's beating on the door when I'm back here, and they'd be the only person back there. Eventually, employees started hearing somebody, kind of a sexless voice, they couldn't tell if it was male or female, saying hey or hi when nobody else was there. Light bulbs burned out like crazy. And just little bitty haunting things like that until the assistant manager, the manager left, and Susan, the assistant manager, was appointed manager. And then things really started to escalate. Employees started seeing a man in a brown business suit, going through the clothes. And when they approached him and asked if he needed help, he'd disappear. Sale signs they'd have up for merchandise, they'd find, it'd just fall on the floor for no reason. They'd start finding pencils and notebooks and things of that nature just sitting in weird places. Eventually, there was a cold spot back in the stock room, and Susan was back there one day. It was during operating hours, so there was another employee there, and this employee was helping a customer out in the front, and Susan was back in the stock room, and she went into the bathroom that was back in the stock room, and when she went to get out of the bathroom, she couldn't. The door wasn't locked, it just wouldn't budge. And, she screamed and nobody heard her, and she started really pounding her shoulder on the door, and eventually it moved far enough away that where she could squeeze out of the door crack. And she looked, and there was these, big boxes of merchandise that had been stacked up against the door.
Oh, God.
Yeah, she went and asked, and then the other person there was like, nobody's been in the storeroom. I've been helping this customer the whole time. And eventually she got scared enough of being there, especially when she was manager and had to be there alone, where she called a paranormal team to come in and take a look. And this paranormal team had a psychic.
Oh, God.
And she could tell when the psychic walked in that whatever was inhabiting her store did not like the psychic. She could feel that the energy was just pissed off.
Hey.
And the psychic, commanded this presence to leave right before the paranormal team left. And after that, things really escalated. Susan went in the next Monday, because this was over the weekend. She went in the next Monday, and all the signs that she had posted for sales were like scattered everywhere. And it took a while to put everything back up. And she was talking about to one of the employees about the signs, like what's going on. And then their employee's like, I don't know, but this place is haunted. We really need to do something about it. And they heard a cracking noise, and they looked up, and a display that weighed about 120 pounds, that was, took a whole lot of effort to bolt to the wall, broke away from the wall, shot out about 5 feet, and crashed to the ground.
Jesus.
And at that point, they were like, F this.
Yeah.
And they walked out of the store, and when they got out of the store, somebody from the neighboring store had come out, and because their entire electricity went out, and they started talking, about weird things that were happening, and this employee from the other store pointed into Susan's store, and she goes, "Look." And all the signs they just put back up on the wall and over clothing racks, were blowing like it was in a big wind.
God.
So, Susan quit.
Jesus. I guess you never know. It could have been like somebody that died in the store like years ago in the 70s or something when the mall was built.
Or something. I mean, you never know. I mean, people put hauntings with buildings, and a lot of times it isn't with a building; it's with a place. I had, it's been a number of years ago. I was, me and a couple other guys were drinking beer, playing, which has nothing to do with the story. Drinking some beer and playing a card game called Pitch in the basement of a friend's house, and the basement was completely empty. It was a new house. As far as he knew, nothing had ever been built on the property. But the guy's name was Victor. And anyway, we were playing pitch in the basement, just completely concrete, and there were no women in the house at all. And the doors were locked upstairs. Playing cards, all of a sudden a woman's voice, clear as hell, said, "Victor," from one of the corners of the basement. And all of us kind of looked at each other, and we finished that hand of cards, and we left. We left Victor there alone. Screw him.
Oh, Jesus.
I wasn't going to stay any farther.
Poor Victor.
Longer. But, no, the thing is, that wasn't associated with the house. It couldn't have been. Because it was a brand new house, brand new foundation poured. Somebody might have died on that spot. Yeah.
It ties, too, into, thinking about the shopping mall story. It's like you wonder, is it like some kind of poltergeist type activity, maybe, Because women, I figure it's like a retail clothing store. I figure there was probably a lot of ladies working there and that kind of the sort of thing that conjures up poltergeist activity, they think,
Maybe. I don't know. Poltergeist activities are usually, associated with teenage girls. The only thing that happens when a bunch of women work in the environment is they start cycling at the same time.
What's that? Oh, that's true. Well, you'd think, given how many teenage girls are at shopping malls, that we'd see more poltergeists there.
Which there should be shit flying all over the place.
Yeah.
Exactly. Stay away from the Mongolian barbecue.
That will cause shit to be flying all over the place. Oh man, how the psychic came, tried to force the entity out. That must make for an awkward. Obviously, it did when the lady came back to work. Must make for an awkward situation because, the paranormal entity's still there. It's like, hey man, thanks a lot. Thanks. I thought, thanks for bringing somebody in to shun me. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought we were cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know if I was the entity, I'd be pissed.
It's just like Tim Tebow felt.
Exactly.
It's like, hey Tim, we're going to bring in Peyton Manning to talk to. You just hang tight.
Yeah. It's like, thanks for selling all those jerseys. See you later. Now, one story that was on the blog that I found interesting because it constitutes a field trip on your part, and that's this trip to this place called Gravity Hill. So I always love these stories, where we can get your first-hand perspective on sort of going and visiting these places. I wish you'd go down to the Fay community, but maybe when I eventually make my trip out to Missouri, that's the first place I'll visit. But tell us about Gravity Hill. What is this?
Okay, if we do go to the Fay community, I hope they make really good popcorn.
Why do you say that?
What? Can you imagine how cool fairy popcorn could be?
Oh. How about their drinks? How about, if I could drink with an elemental, that might be amazing. I bet you they have some fantastic brews.
Right, like Shamrock Shakes, only better.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Gravity Hill, I love going places. Gravity Hill was especially fun because I knew nothing was going to kill me. Anyway, it's in southern Missouri. South western Missouri. I talked with a couple of students who lived from that area, and they were telling me about Gravity Hill, where you park your car and it moves by itself. And I did some research, and about every state has got one of these. A place where you can park your vehicle and, it supposedly moves. Some places it's got a weird twist, like, you park on train tracks.
Yeah.
Or on a bridge. But, this is a hill, and supposedly if you park on this hill, your car can get up to about 25 miles an hour, just sitting in neutral.
Weird.
People are like, this is, it's an optical illusion. You look like you're flat, because of the terrain, but really, you're on a slope. That's why it moves.
Yeah.
So I took some levels from my garage and went down there, and I found a spot. I parked in a couple of spots and let the car go, and come to find out that the spots were on a slope. But I finally found one spot where I set these levels down that my car was sitting on a level plane.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't just set it on one spot. I set it all around my vehicle. So, there's no way that this thing should move when I put it in neutral.
Right.
I marked this spot in the gravel road pretty well so I could go back and try it again and again and again. And I got in and put it in neutral, and boom, it took off. And I got up to about, 15, 17 miles an hour.
Wow.
And that was pretty awesome. And I would back up and do the same thing again. The thing I think was really cool, I did it 7 times. It worked 6. I parked in exactly the same spot each time because I marked where the tires would be, and I made sure I put my vehicle in exactly the same spot every time.
Weird.
And it didn't do it every time. Now, the legend with this place is that, there were kids that got killed in a car wreck, whatever. There's really no proof of that. And supposedly if you put flour on your bumper, there will be kids' handprints there.
Right. I was just going to ask about that aspect of these legends.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of these, places, a lot of these legends have the whole kid handprints thing. And,
right.
And I just, too cheap to waste flour. I just didn't wash my car for a while. And, I got no handprints, but, 6 out of 7 times my car moved.
That's weird.
I would think that maybe there was something, non-strange about it if it happened every time.
Right.
The fact that it didn't happen every time, really, really tipped me off to where there might be something to this Gravity Hill.
Did you feel like freaked out or any sort of weird emotional feeling in you when this was going on, other than maybe elation that it was happening?
No, that was it. The elation that it was happening. Hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like static electrical feeling or anything weird like that?
No, nothing.
Interesting. Okay. Weird. What do your scientist friends think of this?
I never talked to them about it. Thanks. Thanks for calling me out for to talk to my scientist friends.
I thought you would, it isn't, I figured it's always the goal of the paranormal investigator to be proven right. So I thought you would enjoy, being like, well, all right, dude, let's go. We'll go down to Gravity Hill. I'll show you.
Yeah, I wasn't going to drive 3 hours again with these guys just to show them the hill.
Then you won't be friends with them anymore.
What, have you ridden with me before? Yeah.
No, I just mean, with your luck too, then you get down there and it wouldn't work anymore, and you'd be like, no, I'm serious, it happened.
Yeah, with a few colorful expletives in there. Yeah.
Another story I found interesting, only really because I'm completely burned out on Roswell stories, so I mean this with all due respect to the storyteller, but the only thing I really found interesting was the way you were approached by this guy telling the story. And this is the one about Roswell, UFOs, and an 8-year-old boy, and the guy who overheard his dad and some military-type guy talking about Roswell. I thought it was just really weird the way, he just writes to you and sends you his phone number, and he's like, I have information you might want to know. Does that happen to you a lot, where people are like, they want to tell you a story, but they're reticent, so they also want you to kind of chase them a little bit or something?
Well, not usually. This was the strangest one that I had on that case, because usually, people are like, okay, I had this encounter. Do you want to talk to me about it? Well, hell yes, I do.
Yeah.
You know, and this guy was, I mean, he sent me an email message out of the blue. I had no idea who this guy was. And the message was, hello, I might have some information you will want to hear. That was it.
Yeah.
And his telephone number. So I wrote him back and said, any hints? And about 3 hours later, he wrote back and he said, what? Sorry, I thought you wanted information. UFO. No reply is necessary. And I was thinking, what the fuck? But anyway, I called his number and I talked to the guy. He was 67. He's, gosh, if he's still around, he's going to be in his early 70s by now. But his voice was really scratchy. He'd had lung cancer, had one of his lungs removed. His throat was damaged whenever they were operating. He had also a tumor on his thyroid, so his voice was damaged. And anyway, so this guy he was telling me that he knows that he doesn't have all that much time left on the earth, and he wanted to get this story out. And he didn't want me to use his real name either. I called him Marty in the story, but you know, this kind of lent some credence to maybe this guy was telling me the truth, because he was, you know, not wanting any credibility, not wanting any credit for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he was telling me that when he was 8, his dad took him to the Pickwick Hotel in Kansas City because a high school buddy of his dad's was going to be in town. He was stopping at the bus station and was going to stay in town overnight and take off after that. And they stopped at the hotel and met his dad's friend, and Marty doesn't know what branch of service his dad's friend was in, but he was wearing a military uniform. And this was in 1949. Anyway, so they went in the hotel room, and the guys were sitting at a table and they were talking about things, and Marty was sitting on the bed trying to, you know, find out something to do with himself. You know, it's not like they had Nickelodeon at that time.
Yeah.
And he eventually started listening to them. And his dad's friend was talking about working at White Sands Missile Range, and which is the site of the atomic test. And when they were testing new missiles, he told his dad that there was an object, a flying object, a disc-shaped object that would circle the missiles. It was like it was inspecting them as they went up. And then it would just swish, go away.
Yeah. And
after listening to this, the dad, the line of questioning was eventually, you know, I heard a rumor about Roswell, that, you know, one of these flying saucers crashed there. And Marty said that, you know, my dad's friend got extremely serious. And he said, I can't talk about it. He said, it happened, it's real, but that's all I can tell you. And then the gentleman noticed that the boy was listening to them, and they both, you know, looked over and, you know, kind of made, you know, frowned, and his dad said, Marty, I know you heard this, but you got to forget everything. And they eventually, you know, after a little reunion was over, they left and went home. And at some point, it was a couple of years later, Marty's dad took him to a UFO meeting in Kansas City. And during the meeting, he leaned over to Marty, and his dad leaned over to Marty and said, these people are squirrely as squirrels. And they just sit there and listened, and on the way home, Marty's dad said to him, what you saw tonight was horse hockey. He said, we know the truth. We heard the truth. You know, just, that was it. And he said his dad never talked to him about it again.
Strange.
That was it. That was the guy's story.
It's weird, too, because the meeting was in 49, which is a couple years after Roswell, and it's like most people didn't even know anything about Roswell till like the 80s, so it makes it even, you know, stranger in a sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was all over the press in 1947.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So maybe people did remember it, but then it kind of...
Yeah, I mean, we just forgot about it, you know, over the years.
Unless you're like a UFO. It's weird the UFO community seemed to not recall it for a long time either. Well, I guess
because I've got you know, a reproduction of the Roswell Daily Record in my office at work. You know, the flying, you know, disc crashed.
Yeah. Very strange. I just love the way the guy contacted you, like the weird text-esque Response to UFO.
Yeah, it's like, I've got something you want to hear. UFO. Call me. No soup for you.
Now, speaking of strange correspondences, we talked about this one a while ago. I think it was in Darkness Walks. This was about the teenage kids that had like weird abilities, and I think they were trying to fight shadow people or something like that.
Yeah, it was Casey was the girl who contacted me. Yeah, she had like a Scooby gang together.
Right.
And they were, combating shadow people. And yeah, it seems like every one of them had a different ability, the ability to see them or the ability to stop them. And
it was like the X-Men.
It sounded like, the X-Men movie or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a correspondence with her for a while, for a number of months. And she would, she told me stories about, a shadow person appearing in her car as she was driving. And, she, jerked her wheel and tried to drive her into a brick wall, but the brick wall had a pentagram, and it disappeared and she figured the pentagram was the source of power against these, shadow entities, and so she had one tattooed on her hand.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I frankly, Tim, I haven't heard anything from her since then. It's like 2008 since I last heard from her.
Well, let's hope they're out there fighting the good fight for us.
Battling the forces of evil.
Yeah.
If I ever go battle the forces of evil, I am wearing a Batman suit.
Have you seen the movie on real life superheroes?
No, I have not.
There's people that do that.
Well, I know there's a guy, I don't remember his superhero name, but a 25-year-old guy in, I think it was in Washington State or maybe it was Oregon, who dressed up in a Superman, not a Superman suit, but a superhero suit, and went to battle crime, and he was trying to stop a fight. And between a guy and his girlfriend, and the boyfriend beat the hell out of him.
That's got to be embarrassing when you're in the
Well, it's got to be. Yeah, I'm dressed up, like Hawkman or some shit like that, and some guy named Biff punches me out. That's really embarrassing.
Oh man, that's when you retire the superhero outfit. Now we talked about. I got obsessed here for a while on the Fae Girl, but that's not the only tale of paranormal love that can be found from the shadows. There's also a tale of a story about a man who thinks that he may have been romantically involved with an alien.
And for the record, From the Shadows is all about love. Yes, a guy named Scott Palmer. He grew up in Marceline, Missouri, famous at least in Missouri because that's the town where Walt Disney lived until he was 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, the town's like 2,500 people. He grew up there, and in the early 80s, he and a friend moved to nearby Columbia, Missouri, where the University of Missouri is. His sister was going to school there. And he was looking for a job. So him and his buddy were crashing on his sister's couch, and she was living with a couple other girls, which is awesome if you're like 19 or 20 years old, hanging out with all these girls. And one he really liked. She was a blonde girl, really tall. He said she was dressed. She was, looked kind of like a gymnast. Had blue eyes. Anyway, he took a real liking to her and flirted with her quite a bit, and eventually asked her out for a date, and she said yes. And they went out. He said she was really, really weird. Anytime he talked with her, she was fairly emotionless, and whenever he'd bring up things at the time that were relevant, this was back in the day where the Rubik's Cube was relevant, and she had no idea what it was.
Oh, weird.
And, he'd bring up, events that people should know things about, like, who won the World Series, who won the Super Bowl, this year. A lot of people don't pay attention to that, but, it's all over the news. And, she didn't know anything about current events whatsoever, didn't know anything about pop culture whatsoever. And he just thought it was weird. And eventually he talked her into having sex with him. And
I like the way.
well, some guys really have to work at it. And I guess if you're from Zeta Reticuli, I mean, it's takes a lot of talking.
Yeah.
Or clicks and whistles, but we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so he said that she was again really emotionless, and she was like she had no idea what they were doing, and she didn't talk a lot, didn't talk a lot before, didn't talk a lot after, and didn't act like anything had happened. A few days later, she announced that her sister was coming into town, and her sister came into town, and this guy got his buddy who was also staying at the apartment. He's like, "Come on, you got to go on a double date." And the buddy, I interviewed him as well, and he was like, I don't know what he saw in that girl. She was pretty ugly, but he agreed to go out with this girl's sister, and they looked like almost identical twins. They're the same height, same gymnast body, blue eyes, amazingly pale skin. And before the date, the guys were sitting on the couch, and these two girls who said they were sisters started talking to each other, and they got into an argument and started yelling. And when they noticed the boys were paying attention to this, they walked into the other room. And both of the guys heard the same thing. Their voices turned into something that sounded like, something from the cantina scene on Star Wars. Like an insect-type noise.
Yeah.
Clicks, scraping, whistles, shrieks. And this scared the fuck out of them. And they ran, they got out of there. They left and went and talked about this. And eventually they thought, if these things are aliens, which they might be kind of ticked off that we're not there anymore. So they went back and went on the date. They took the girls to dinner and then dumped them back home and moved out of their sister's apartment, this guy's sister's apartment, as quick as possible. Weird.
Did he ever hear from this chick again or no? This is the 80s.
No, he didn't want to. Didn't want to at all. He would not give me his sister's contact information, but I talked him into getting a hold of his sister, and he said his sister just was not. He didn't want. She didn't want to give him any information about this girl at all.
Odd. And the weird part too is like, you wonder what they're. Well, first of all, it's weird that it sounded like she was fairly emotionless. Then it changes on a dime, and she's fighting with the sister, and you wonder what they're fighting about in the first
I don't know
place.
which one gets to eat the head first.
Yeah, exactly. Very weird stuff. See, so that there is love blooming it from the shadows.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I had skipped this one, but I want to bring it back because we're sort of not feeling the pinch on time, and this is the one about the man who never feels cold. Because as you say in the post, I mean, this has been well documented. This is paranormal, but then it goes into sort of like, paranormal that's backed up by proof that this guy feels no cold. So it's a very bizarre story. So I guess
it only fits in paranormal because paranormal means beyond what's normal.
Right.
So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guy named Harold Deal from Lawson, Missouri, which Lawson's an interesting town. I actually lived there for a year, and this guy's from Lawson, Missouri. I wrote a Black-Eyed Kids encounter from Lawson.
Huh.
So, yeah, some strange things have happened there. Anyway, back in 1969, Harold Deal was an electrical contractor, and he had his son, Larry, who was about 10 at the time, working on a house, and it was 9-something, and a thunderstorm hit. And his son, Larry, kept saying, "Dad, come on, please take me home. I don't like being out here in this thunderstorm." So they got in the truck and went home. And he looked at his watch when they pulled into the parking lot. It was like, I think 9:21 or something p.m. He sent his son to the house to see if the door was open because he had a bunch of papers. He didn't want to get really wet. Anyway, his son opened the door and beckoned him to come inside. And Harold stepped out of his truck, walked a few steps, and then he said it's like he felt like there was an explosion, and it felt like his head was pushed down into his shoulders. What had happened is lightning struck him, and he was blasted out of his shoes. He had boots with tall laces, and he was just blasted out of those. He said later people found his shoes and all of the little eye holes, the eyelets that you lace up, were gone. Anyway, he didn't remember he didn't know anything until like 4 o'clock in the morning. And then it was like everything was pins and needles. He couldn't move. He was in tremendous pain. He ended up having like two vertebrae removed from his back to relieve the pain. And he was told he would never walk again, and he eventually did. But one of the things that he discovered was that heat bothered him now. But other than heat, he couldn't feel pain, he couldn't taste anything, and he could not feel cold.
Oh.
And as you're saying, this thing was well documented. Yes, I mean, he had all sorts of medical tests run. He was featured in newspaper articles around the world. He was on news TV programs around the world. He wears shorts and a t-shirt all the time. Never wears a coat. He will, if he's feeling uncomfortable by the heat, he'll buy a bunch of bags of ice and just sit in the bathtub covered with bags of ice.
Okay.
He once appeared in where was it? Hell, Michigan. I think that was the name of the town. Hell, Michigan. For some TV promotion, and he had to stand 4 hours in negative 70-degree temperatures, and it didn't damage his skin at all. He said he didn't feel cold at all, didn't hurt him at all.
See, that's the weird part too. It's not that it just doesn't hurt him, but he doesn't.
I can fathom that. I can understand that his nerves were damaged to where he couldn't feel the pain, but it would still, you'd think it would damage the flesh, but it doesn't.
So weird. Bizarre. And it's like, how could that, the strange part is it's like, you could maybe understand, I don't know, someone being born with that kind of anomaly somehow, but to gain that weird ability from being struck by lightning is so, makes you wonder about the real potential of the human species in a way.
Right, like, I'd love to get bitten by a radioactive spider.
Exactly.
No, it's the same type of thing. It's like he now has a superpower.
Right.
Yeah, and I also interviewed a doctor in Chicago at a clinic that deals with electrical shock, lightning storms or severe electrical shocks, and she said that this sort of stuff happens. Weird things happen to people when they get hit with that much electricity. She doesn't know of any case like Harold Deal's where he can't feel cold at all, or he is not affected by it. He also went through sort of a spiritual transformation. He, at one point in his life, his wife at the time divorced him and left because of all the problems he was going through with the surgeries and the fact that he was now kind of an outcast. All of his former friends kind of abandoned him. He was close to committing suicide, and he said that he said God spoke to him. He said God spoke to him. He said God spoke to me, and he told me that I had a better purpose. And now Harold Deal works with the Lightning Strike and Electric Shock Survivors International Group, and he helps people through problems they have with what's happened to them.
Huh. Well, that's good. Yeah, well, it's strange. It's struck by lightning. No one wants that to happen. But then you hear the story and you're like, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, let's go out there and play. Give me a golf club.
All right, now the last story I have here on the list is about some really strange creature called the Calanoro that apparently lurks in Madagascar.
Right, and the reason I grabbed onto this is a professor from the University of Missouri. He's done a lot of work in Madagascar.
Right.
And there is, this started back in the late 1990s. This was a story, allegedly Navy SEALs photographed of a group of 13 Kalanaro who are gray, unidentified apes that have quills rolling, going up and down its spine, and for some odd reason their feet are on backward. Okay, again, as we talked about earlier in the interview, pictures, I don't trust them at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can't believe them at all. And the ape-like thing with the quills in the back kind of reminded me a little bit about, the chupacabra. But,
right, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going there too much because it doesn't really suck blood. But this thing is also, anyway, this professor from the University of Missouri, his name is Joe Hobbs. He studied a little bit about it, the indigenous cultures of Madagascar, and people there believe in this thing. They don't really see it as, an unidentified ape with backward feet. They see it as more of a spiritual being, kind of like the elves and trolls of European folklore.
Yeah. And
what this thing allegedly does is it steals children from bad parents, which to me kind of rings of threatening, society threatening parents.
Yeah.
That if you're not nice to your kids, the Kalanaro is going to come and get you.
It's like a supernatural social worker.
Right, exactly. Except for you don't have to go to classes afterwards. Yeah. One of the things I really, really like about this Kalanaro is that there are tribes that have their children that are kidnapped. It's not that I like that part, but it's the part I like.
Yeah. Odd turn of phrase.
there's a different type of paranormal entity called a tromba, which is a spirit that will demand, you must give me, this type of food, and I'll give you your kids. I'll make the Kalanaro will give you your kids back, and these people will give it food, and Mr. Hobbs or Dr. Hobbs said that this one village that was having a problem with the Kalanaro, there was one specific villager who was possessed by a tromba, this spirit. And the tromba would tell parents, if you leave offerings of honey and liquor in the forest, I'll make sure your kids come back. And the kids would go leave, or the parents would go leave their honey and liquor in the forest, and it would disappear and their kids would come back. I want that job.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah.
I would totally be possessed by a tromba. Yeah, you give me some honey and some liquor, yeah, you can have your kids, no problem. Sounds like extortion.
Yeah, that's a good deal, see? Some of these paranormal entities haven't figured out. All right, now we've talked about a lot of devious and sinister and downright creepy creatures and entities in this 2-hour conversation, but you've kind of had your own run-in with a devious entity over the last few weeks, if not month or so. This is the plagiarist who has taken from you and won an award in stealing an article written by you, a humor article. So talk about this situation, Offutt versus the plagiarist.
Well, this is something that you don't think. I mean, this is like getting crabs or something. It's going to happen to somebody else. It never happens to you.
Yeah.
All right. So actually, I probably should have said headlights, but let's go with crabs.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, you don't think this sort of thing's going to happen. Like somebody's going to steal your writing, your work, and put their name on it and pass it off as theirs. I mean, that's something that happened pre-internet.
Yeah.
You'd think. I mean, because if somebody were to do that, they'd get busted in 2 minutes because that's all it would take, or even less than that, to feed something in Google, and that's kind of what happened. I got contacted by a fellow humor columnist who now lives in Singapore. He was looking for an article that he'd written back in 2001. So he fed a few keywords that he knew he wrote in that specific order into Google, and his article came up. And it came up again and again and again, and 2 of those agains had a guy named John Flatland's name attached to it. And he was kind of upset and curious, and he did more research and discovered that this guy, and it's okay that I say John Flatland over and over because the guy has admitted to the Associated Press that he did plagiarize. So legally, you're off the hook, Tim.
All right, yeah. No, my brother's a lawyer. We're all good.
Okay, cool. Anyway, yeah, so he looked and he found at least a dozen humor columnists who this guy had been plagiarizing over the years and passing the work off as their own. And, one of the people was me, the guy that had stolen some of my stuff. And the initial email said, yes, and John Flatlands won the North Dakota Newspaper Association's Humor Columnist of the Year for 2011. We're not sure whose column it is, but we'll keep digging into it. And come to find out it was mine. It's an article about that I wrote about me going to the grocery store and buying tampons for my wife.
And he just took it.
He won the award. So, and I was two emotions at the same time. I was flattered and angry.
Yeah.
So for a while I was kind of flangry. Yeah. So because hey, my stuff's good enough for somebody to rip off. Oh, that bastard ripped me off. So I explored all sorts of options, talked to a number of other because he ripped off columnists from Singapore to Honolulu.
My goodness.
And come to find out, he got busted for this back in the 90s and still continued to do it. Since then, I explored legal stuff. I talked to a couple lawyers about it, and I didn't want any money because newspaper people don't have any money. Because I was one at one point.
Yeah.
Okay, I teach now, and teachers don't have any money, so that's. But the one thing I wanted, and the other humor columnist, this guy had ripped off, John Flatland, had ripped off. All we wanted was to get this out, to have people know that this guy is a thief.
Yeah.
And the Associated Press picked the story up for the Poynter Institute, which is, the go-to place for journalist education, got this. The National Society of Newspaper Columnists had this. NPR, all sorts of
oh wow, so it's really gotten around
stuff in the Midwest. So this stuff went, not only did it go all over the Midwest, all over the United States. Since one of the columnists now lives in Singapore, it was in the Times of India.
Oh wow.
So this guy's name is crap all over the place.
Good. What are the odds that they're going to just change the name on the plaque and give you the award? You deserve it. Or do you have to write in North Dakota to get it?
I don't know. I actually got a hold of the president of the North Dakota Newspaper Association, and is a very nice man. And he said to me, he goes, "Yeah, this is your column. We're really sorry that this happened. We had nothing to do with it, but we're really sorry about this." And I said, "Can I get a copy of the award?" He's like, "I'll see what I can do to get it for you." Hopefully that means he's actually going to try. I would love a copy of the award with my name on it, but I think I would even more like a copy of the award with his name on it. So I could take a crayon and cross out John Flatland and write my name in.
My goodness. Now from my understanding of the story, he put in his thing and he put in his resignation and bailed, right? Is he nowhere to be found now, or is he kind of falling on his sword and apologizing, or is he just sort of yeah, I did it and I'm out of here?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what happened when he got Dave Fox is the humor columnist who now lives in Singapore, who initially discovered the plagiarism. He contacted the newspaper where this guy worked in Minnesota and talked to the publisher, and the publisher blew it off, first because John Flatland had great credentials. He was actually the president of the North Dakota Newspaper Association at one point. So this guy had great credentials, and so he blew it off, and then with a second, email and later phone call, this guy went and talked to Flatland about it, and Flatland's like, "Oh yeah, I did it. Screw it. I'm quitting. I'm resigning before you can fire me. I'm out of here." To quote Eric Cartman, "Screw you guys. I'm going home." And nobody was able to get a hold of him for about a week and a half. Finally, the Associated Press bugged him enough to get this quote: "Yes, I did it, but not as extensively as what they're saying."
Oh God!
Even though we have evidence, so whatever.
What a dick. Well, good. No one will ever trust him again. So you don't steal from my friend Jason.
Yeah, man. You're going to come out there to Minnesota and beat some ass.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we got to hold. all the columnists, we got together and we're like, who's the closest? Okay, I was. Yeah, I'm not paying $3.60 a gallon of gas just to go up and kneecap somebody. Crazy.
He must be like in his 60s or something by now, right? He's probably an old dude.
47 years old.
Oh, jeez. God, I thought it was weird, too, that... Now we're really digging it, because I've been following this story. I thought it was weird, too, like his daughter's like an editor somewhere, and she's like, please stop calling him my dad.
Yeah, his daughter's an editor at a paper in Iowa. Yeah, she's one of the columnists the guy from Honolulu got a hold of her, and she was like, okay, I'm going to look into this, but yeah, I'm not claiming him. He's not my dad.
Oh my God, that must make for an awkward Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, could you just bring me on just, weekly? No, dude, no.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Dad. Even worse at Christmas. Oh, yeah, thanks for the present, Dad. Where'd you steal it?
It's what I gave you last year.
There's nothing wrong with regifting.
unless you're a serial plagiarist, then.
And unless, yes.
Or no, actually, he'd be more like, yeah, well, Bill got the same thing for his daughter, so I figured this would be the perfect gift for you.
No, because after a while, people will expect it. Oh, it's a present from Uncle Douchebag.
Oh God! All right, so that's the status on the plagiarist. Well, I'm sorry it happened to you, but I guess I'm glad that it got exposed. So it's very weird.
Yeah, well, that's just again. I mean, in journalism, we are supposed to have ethics. We get them pounded into our head from college on. I mean, there's a plaque on the wall of every news organization in the United States, saying what you should and shouldn't do. And still stuff like this happens.
Yeah. It's just you wonder what goes through somebody's mind when they're doing that kind of thing. It's one thing to do sort of an accidental plagiarism type thing. You hear those kind of stories, but this is just serial, blatant, over the top fucking copying.
No, this is cocky plagiarism.
Right.
Yeah, this is I'm going to do this and see you. This is not. I kind of read this in a book once, and I think it sounds kind of neat. I don't remember where I got it.
Right.
But, yeah, I'll change the words.
Right. This is like you said, on the one he won the award for, he just changed it to be from Missouri to North Dakota.
Well, yeah, he did, and one of the things he changed is I had a footnote on the article. I was back when I used to cover sports. I was at a Monday Night Football game at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, and I was taking a leak up in the press room bathroom, and Dan Deerdorf, Hall of Fame offensive lineman from the Cardinals, from the St. Louis Cardinals, who was on Monday Night Football at the time, stood next to me. And it was like, I wrote that, man, in the bathroom, you really can't ask for an autograph. So I told him no. that was my joke, and this guy took the exact joke, but he put Fran Tarkington instead of Deerdorf, just to regionalize it.
Oh my God, that's probably that's probably his definition of being creative.
Right? Yeah, just to change that.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't tried to to rebrand himself as this was like a long, humorous thing he was trying to do. Oh, now you've got my joke.
Yeah, this is performance art.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. To give any justice in the world, the way our entertainment system works in this country, he's probably going to get $1 million book deal.
Exactly, a reality show or something.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, that's the list here of the strange and unusual that I found in my perusal of From the Shadows. There's so much more in there, folks. You got to check it out. I highly recommend it. And of course, you're writing for Mysterious Universe all the time now as well, so you're all over the place.
Well, yeah, I try to be.
Exactly. Yeah. So what's going on with you now as 2012 unfolds? Long-awaited 2012.
Oh yeah, I'm not predicting the world's coming to an end.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not going to happen. Yeah, I love a story I read recently. Well, not recently, it was a couple months ago, because people think the Mayans disappeared. But the Mayans didn't disappear. They're great advanced cultures with these big cities, and pyramids and whatnot. Yeah, they kind of moved away from those great structures that we think about, but there are still Mayans. And in the story I read, they were like, yeah, I don't know what the big deal is.
Right.
It's not going to come to an end. It's the end of an age. Age of Aquarius, whatever, it comes to an end. So yeah, we'll still be here.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing. I mean, well, this has been going on since I got into this field, like in the early 2000s. Everyone's been talking about this 2012 thing, so I can't wait till it's over.
I remember, this is what a paranormal geek I've been for a long time. I remember as maybe a 10-year-old kid reading about the end of the Mayan calendar in December 2012 and thinking, man, I'm going to be around for the end of the world. Well, that's unless I'm around for the end of the world when 2000 hits. Which end of the world am I going to worry about?
Yeah. Well, I always think back on I saved the front, I don't know if I still have it somewhere around here, but I saved the front page of the Boston Globe on just January 1st, 2000. And it had just like the most amazing sort of mind-bending lead line. It was like, today's a day that, your great-grandparents, never could experience, and your great-grandchildren never will either. It's like the start of a whole new millennium. It's pretty amazing when you think about it like that. Yeah,
and it really annoyed me, and I fought with my publisher because I was still working in the newspaper industry about the year 2000. It was not the new millennium.
Oh, I know. You've sent me
I've given that
emails
speech
about
before,
this.
haven't I?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 2001.
I know, but
And that was exactly the publisher's response was, well, everybody thinks it is. Like, well, we're supposed to be spreading truth. Math is truth, right?
I know, it's true. But, when they do shows like I Love the 80s, they always start with 80. They never include the 90 in it, so it's just the mind of man.
Yeah, that's one problem. That's one of the many, many problems I have with the media. Yeah, we're spreading false information because everybody thinks so that makes it right. Yeah, I got that speech from my parents when I was a kid.
Speaking of the media, I got a show recommendation for you. It's since you are in the media, and you're a big Bill Shatner fan.
I love Bill Shatner.
It's called Aftermath with William Shatner. It's an amazing show. It's like he interviews people who were involved in craze of the moment sort of stories.
It's Aftermath.
Aftermath.
As not to be confused with After MASH starring Jamie Farr.
No. And it's really good. It's on BoAAudio. I don't know if they still have new episodes or what, but they've been running the reruns on Saturday mornings, and it's really good. It's he had the guy who shot those teenagers on the subway in New York in the 80s, and he had Jessica Lynch. He had Mary J. Letourneau, the teacher who slept with her student. So it's people who were involved in these massive, scandalous type stories, and how they dealt with the whole thing and the fallout of it.
That is awesome. I would love to. I will watch that.
Yeah.
I've not even heard of it.
I know. I never heard of it either. I was just flipping around, and I was because I knew that Bill Shatner had the talk show. And then I'm like, what is this? Another Bill Shatner show? This guy's amazing. Yeah, the one that hooked me was Unabomber's brother. Just unbelievable. Yeah. I was like, holy
Ed
shit.
Kaczynski brother. That's great.
Yeah. And it was how he grappled with deciding to turn his brother in, and how the FBI screwed him by revealing to everybody that he was the one that turned his brother in.
Yeah, talk about your awkward family reunions, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's worse than the plagiarist. Oh, yeah, I turned my brother in. He's in jail.
Apparently, Unabomber not returning his letters. That's what he said.
Well, I would be glad if the Unabomber did not return my letters. Yeah, and you know the dude who shot the teenagers, I'm gonna wake up at 3:00 in the morning remembering that guy's name.
What do you mean?
I know the guy's name. I remember following that story, and that name's gonna pop in my head in the middle of the night, and I'm gonna call you, Tim.
Oh no!
And wake your ass up.
Let me see if I can find it here. Bernie Getz.
Bernie Getz.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll sleep soundly tonight.
That was a chilling episode. That guy, I don't think he's all there in the head. So, but I don't know what to make of it. But he was very. He actually suggested to Shatner that he bring a model of the gun with him to the episode taping, so he could actually recreate the motion of his shooting. So
awesome TV.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
And it's a shame Timothy McVeigh's not still alive.
This is true.
I mean, at least for TV.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, then he just had some interesting turns of phrase, or something like Shatner was like, "Well, how did you feel about the awesome power of what you were doing, and and pulling the trigger and all that?" And he was like, "That's the problem of the person who the bullet's going towards. It's like, that's not my concern." So it's like, wow, dude, you are one cold fucking motherfucker, man. You are cold. He's like, didn't you think about that? He's like, that's not my problem. That's their problem. He's like, once the bullet leaves the chamber, that's someone else's issue.
Shit, that's something Dirty Harry would say.
Yeah, dude. He was intense. Oh, God. So you said here at the beginning of the conversation that, you've been doing some humor stuff, obviously, maybe a little bit more than the paranormal. What do you have cooking here, in the next few months, weeks, years, all that stuff?
With what? Humor or what?
With everything. What can people look forward to from you?
Oh, with everything. I drove to Canada this summer.
Oh.
And it's a humor travel book. Because I just, after actually it stems from one of my last paranormal books, What Lurks Beyond, because in that book I, found all the paranormal things I could within 100 miles of my house, and I was thinking, damn, if I could find that, there's probably really cool non-paranormal things I could find.
Right.
So on a stretch of old U.S. highway that's like right outside my door. It goes all the way up to International Falls. And, I mean, there are all sorts of, things like Glenn Miller's birthplace, the band leader, the town 4-H was founded in, Sinclair Lewis's boyhood home, really big fucking statues of really weird things like crows and Paul Bunyan. Just a bunch of just really interesting things. The town I stopped in is the home of Dudley Do-Right of the Canadian Mounted Police.
He was real?
No. Of course not. He was a cartoon character, but that's where they said he was from.
Oh, okay.
He was from Fort Francis, Ontario. So, I mean, I wrote about all this, and I actually ran into one paranormal story in Long Prairie, Minnesota. A guy, radio announcer, he was 19, he was just getting started. He was driving home, rounded a corner out of the country, and there was a rocket sitting in the middle of the road.
Jesus.
And his car, the electricity died, and he got out of the car, looked at it, and he was like, okay, I got to get around this. So he tried to start the car again because he was going to push it over. And the car wouldn't start, of course, so he got out, and these three little robots that looked like tin cans got out on three legs and stared at him for a few minutes, got back up in the vehicle, it took off, and his car started.
Jesus.
Yeah, kind of strange stuff, but
you'd like to think their robots are more advanced than ours, but that sounds like something you'd see in, like, Japan now. Like a little tin can thing with little stick legs.
No, it sounds like stuff that I saw in, Johnny Sacco and his Flying Robot back when I was a kid. But yeah, I've got that book I'm working on, and right now another humor writer and I are we've got a website out. It's actually a blogspot site. It's called Why Are Men Such Assholes? It's at whyaremenssuchassholes.blogspot.com, and what the basic gist of this is we're taking questions from women that they've always wanted to ask guys, but either were too afraid to ask or didn't expect an honest answer from their boyfriend or husband. So we're taking that and giving them an honest answer.
Nice.
It's not always polite.
Uh-oh.
And we drop the F-bomb a lot. Maybe it's rated R, but, yeah.
So it's like this show.
Pretty much. So, yeah, that's why I mentioned it. So that's out there.
Interesting. All right. I'll have to check that out. If you ever need input on, asshole-ish tendencies, feel free to ask.
Actually, Tim, this guy and I, we were making lists of people we wanted to look at the blog, and I was like, because it's eventually something we're hoping to turn into a book, but we're trying to get input from people to see if we're going in the right direction. And I wrote a list of people I was going to get an invite to look at, and yours was on there, and I was like, man, I don't know if I should invite Tim.
Oh, no, why?
I don't know if I didn't want to offend Tim.
Oh, no. It's perfectly fine.
All right. Well, take a look at it. Why are men such assholes.blogspot.com.
I will. I've just bookmarked it, so.
Awesome.
Interesting. I'll have to check this out. Jason Offutt weighing in on the battle of the sexes. So that's
it's an ongoing battle.
Exactly. It's been going on since the Garden of Eden. So that's in the humor realm. What about in the paranormal genre?
Well, I'd mentioned it earlier. I'm looking at I'm compiling stories for a book called Dangerous Entities.
Oh, yeah.
In that, I'll cover some of the things that I talked about tonight: the priest, the gnome. Probably going to touch on shadow people and black-eyed kids. They're also the Harlequin.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to talk about the Harlequin. And there are also some encounters that I've collected over the past year about human-looking people. They look like people, except for there's something about them that everybody around them recognizes as, just being wrong.
What do you
mean?
Just
being terrifying. Just the mere presence of this person makes you want to stand 10 fucking feet away.
Well, you have a story on the blog, actually. I almost put it in the notes, but I was trying to keep it tight. But you have a story about a guy at a bar, and he's hitting on a woman, and this 6'8" monstrous man sits down, and the woman takes off, and the guy seems to have some kind of weird psychic connection almost. He knows the dude's name. I think the guy's name was Tim, actually.
The guy's name was Tim. Yeah, it was at a casino in California, and this guy was 200 miles away from home, and his home was a town of about 20,000 people, and he was he'd never seen this guy before. He said he looked like he just was a lumberjack walked out of the forest. And he was flirting with this girl next to him, and this guy, he felt his presence before the guy even walked up and sat down. But when he got up and sat down, he turned around and looked at this guy, and when he turned back, the woman he was flirting with was gone. And this guy started talking to him, like he kind of knew him. He called him by his name, Tim. He mentioned the name of the town this guy was from. And this Tim was, and maybe you're like this too, Tim. This guy was unnerved, but he was like, damn it, I'm not going to leave before I finish my drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And when he finished his drink, the guy said, you're all right, Tim, which kind of felt like to Tim that this guy was saying, okay, I'm not going to kill you. And yeah, when he went and talked to the woman who ran who ran off, he eventually found her someplace else in the casino, and she said something like, didn't you get the I'm going to kill you and throw you in the back of my van vibe from that dude?
Jesus, that is weird. Yeah.
That's one of the stories that I was talking about, yeah.
Yeah. It tweaked me out when I was reading it. It's I think, honestly, dude, it's a little past midnight here, and every time I do these interviews with you, after I get off the phone, I'm tweaked out for like till I go to bed. So you're a spooky man.
Well, I'm which is really always weirded me out that I can do that, but I also write some funny shit.
I know, you're a funny guy, too.
I'm like, there's some Sybil thing going on here, maybe.
Now, what about the paranormal journalism course? I know you did that a few years ago. Any motion to maybe get that going again, or is that kind of tied up with the politics of academia kind of thing?
No, actually, everybody in the department and in our particular college of the university was all for it. So I could do it again probably any time I wanted to. We've been going through curriculum revision, so I've put it on the back burner. But I've got a lot of students that are interested, and I'm the paranormal guy, so I get all sorts of people wandering in my office, a couple times a week asking some question about ghost UFOs or when I'm going to teach that class again.
Nice.
I'll let you know when I do.
Absolutely, please do. All right, so we've talked about upcoming humor projects and upcoming paranormal stuff, and next time I talk to you will probably be in a couple of weeks to talk about upcoming baseball stuff. But by the time people hear this, it'll be after that. So we'll have our own weird
Joaquin
times.
Soria's Tommy John surgery. Hopefully, it'll be over by then, and he'll be recuperating.
Yeah. What is it with this Tommy John surgery, dude? Everyone's getting that now.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that we got a lot of bad news at once. We were trying to talk to Peyton Manning. Well, he signed with our arch nemesis, the Broncos. And about the same day, the Missouri Tigers lost in the first round of the NCAA, tournament, and then all these injuries happened. Yeah, to our baseball team. So, not good to be a Kansas City sports fan right now.
Oh, yeah.
Or ever, I guess.
In the 80s, it was good.
Yeah, I vaguely remember.
Well, on that note, we've gone 2.5 hours, and I just can't thank you enough, Jason. I can't believe how fast it went by, and just amazingly quickly this went by. And I loved hearing about these stories and talking to you about these stories and trying to figure out what the hell's going on with these things. I mean, you have an amazing life dealing with all these tales and stuff. I envy you, but sometimes I don't, because I'm frightened by a lot of them. So,
well, for me, it's mostly all fun. Not all of it, but mostly. And Tim, I always enjoy talking with you. It's like we're sitting in a bar shooting the shit.
Exactly. Yeah. So, thank you once again for coming back on the show. And obviously, we're going to be talking again in the future for sure.
Okay, absolutely, man. Just anytime you want to have me on.
Be more than happy, buddy.
That does it for this edition of BoAAudio Season 7. Big thanks to our buddy Jason Offutt for coming back on the show. Be sure to check out his many fine books and head on over to his website from-the-shadows.blogspot.com for many more creepy tales from Jason Offutt. Be sure to check it out. Moving right along now, it's time for BoAAudio listener feedback, and we're going to break a little bit from tradition here because we have got some breaking news that I'm sure the hardcore BoAAudio listeners will be very happy to hear, since it ties up one of the major running mysteries of the end caps of this program. As you heard last week, we got an email from Jason asking for an update on the mysterious William Zabel, and I mentioned that we had not found any new information about William Zabel since the last time we provided an update on the program. I wrote Jason back, and just by happenstance, he mentioned that he had found William Zabel on Facebook, but had not heard back from him. He tried to contact him. That was a revelation to me. I never even considered looking for William Zabel on Facebook. So I punch in his name. Lo and behold, there's William Zabel on Facebook. Of course, I befriended him and then subsequently wrote him a message asking if this was William Zabel of Columbine conspiracy fame. He accepted my friend request, and then the next day I received a response from William Zabel confirming that yes, indeed, it is the William Zabel. Included in the response was an update on what he's been up to, as well as maybe some indication of what's been going on here with this mysterious disappearance. So I'm going to read an excerpt here from the message that William Zabel sent to me. He says, "I am still working on Columbine and have in fact tracked nearly 50 people dead after April 20th, 1999, under suspicious circumstances. This not only includes students, but staff, parents, and others in some way connected to Columbine. The website is still not where I want it to be and have had strange things happen to it, causing me to change hosting companies 3 times now. I also think that somebody in government is blocking emails and phone calls, as I never got any of those after we talked the last time. I also have a friend who is helping me with continual research into school shootings, and she says that when she calls, a recorded message says the phone has been disconnected. Also, many people report that their emails get sent to me successfully, but I never receive them." So there you go. That's the update on William Zabel. He is alive and well. I responded to this message just to make things even more mysterious and bizarre. I responded to the message, said, it's great to hear from you. I don't know what's been going on here and why you haven't gotten any of my emails and stuff. That is all very strange. We would love to have you back on the program to get an update on what you've been working on. Sent that message to him last week, and, of course, have yet to hear any response from William Zabel to that invitation to come back on the program. So, I'm going to say, at this point, I'm 90% sure this is the real William Zabel, but who knows? This could be a William Zabel imposter. This could be somebody just pretending to be William Zabel, sort of riding on the infamy of the episode and his subsequent disappearance, but I'm pretty sure it is William Zabel. It sounded like him in the tone of the message, but I cannot confirm 100% until I get on the phone with him and speak to him. I am really hoping that we can connect with William Zabel sometime here in the next few weeks and get him back on BoAAudio, if indeed it is the real William Zabel. I will keep everybody posted as to the status of this mystery, but for now, I feel pretty safe in saying that William Zabel is alive and well, and he has been found, and nothing nefarious has happened to him. So, mystery solved here on the program, and hopefully we'll get him back on the show in the near future to expand on the Columbine conspiracy and pick up where we left off a few years ago here on the program. I got to give big thanks to Jason, who mentioned the whole Facebook connection. I never would have even thought to look for William Zabel on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook, I guess. So thank you to Jason for providing the last piece of the puzzle to tracking down the mysterious William Zabel. Since it is BoAAudio listener feedback, we'll do one email here from a listener that made me laugh, and then we'll get you on your way. This one comes from Tom in Dayton. Here's what he has to say. "Roland Watson, just one thing I don't understand." That was the subject line. And then all in caps, "Every bleeping word that guy said," with all exclamation points. Sincerely, Tom in Dayton. And he actually didn't say bleeping. He said asterisk, percentage, caret, money sign, that whole thing. Kudos for creativity in the bleeping part. And I feel your pain, Tom. I understand where you're coming from. I was concerned at times that people might have a hard time sort of getting into the Roland Watson episode because his Scottish accent was so thick. But when I listened to it, I understood all of it. And when I did the interview with him, I understood everything that he had to say. So I feel like the more you listen, the better understanding you get of what Roland Watson was saying. And there are a lot of programs out there that wouldn't have Roland Watson on the show because they'd be afraid that his accent was too thick. But BoAAudio takes the risks, and we bring on the guests regardless of how they sound, as long as they're not speaking a totally foreign language and I can't understand them. So, apologies to you, Tom, that you did not enjoy that program, presumably. But stay tuned, there's plenty more programs coming down the pike at you here from BoAAudio. Thus concludes this installment of BoAAudio listener feedback. Thanks to Tom in Dayton for the chuckle-inducing email, and of course thanks once again to Jason for helping us with the additional clue to track down William Zabel. If you'd like to be a part of future installments of BOA audio listener feedback, there are a myriad of ways to do so. You can head on over to binallofamerica.com, BINNALL of America.com, and click the contact button. Or just write to BoAAudio@hotmail.com, and I'll receive your email there. And if you want to get a little more interactive, you can join up at the official BOA forum, theusofe.com, theusofe.com. It is BOA's paranormal playground. Lots of cool folks there talking about the world of the esoteric as well as pop culture. Always lots of fun to be had at the US of E. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that we are on Facebook and Twitter. So just punch in Binnall, BINNALL, into their search engines and you'll find me on those sites. Feel free to befriend me, follow me, or poke me. It's all good, and I'd be happy to add you to my online circle of friends. And if you are on Facebook, check out the Binnall of America page there. Like us on Facebook, and you'll get cool updates and additional ramblings from me regarding the BOA franchise. Up next, please allow me to thank the outstanding and esteemed BOA staff: Leslie, Chiron, Regan Lee, Joe V, Tina Senna, Richard Thomas, Bruce Pretty, Tony Morrill, and our webmaster, Jeremy Boston. We got a new column posted since the last time you heard from me. That one's from Bruce Pretty, talking about the Marjorie Fish star map case, and I'm sitting on a couple columns from Regan Lee and Leslie, so stay tuned to Binnall of America for new missives from the longtime BOA staff members. We say it all the time, but it bears repeating, my friends. If you're only listening to BOA audio and you're not reading the columns at Binnall of America, then you're only getting half the story. BOA, make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. Now comes the time in the program where I take my hat off and pass it around to the hardcore BOA audio listeners who've stuck around to the very end, and ask you to make a donation to help keep the BOA franchise up and running. There are two ways in which you can help us out. First of all, you can head on over to Binnall of America and click the PayPal button. That's on the left-hand side of the screen. That'll bring you to PayPal. They'll help you to facilitate a donation to BOA. Or you can write to us at our snail mail address, and that is as follows: Tim Binnall, P.O. Box 232, Pinehurst, Mass. 01866. The complete address, of course, can be found at Binnall of America under the PayPal button. As always, no donation is too small, and all donations go towards keeping Binnall of America and BOA audio up and running, freely available and commercial-free for all of our great readers and listeners the world over. On the next edition of BOA Audio, we've got another mind-bending installment of the program for you, my friends. Our guest is Gerard Williams, co-author of the truly captivating and sensational book, Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler. And this is a tremendous conversation. I loved this book and could not wait to sit down with Gerard Williams and explore this story. Essentially, Gerard Williams and his co-author lay out the case that Adolf Hitler escaped from Germany and ended up hiding out in Argentina following World War II. I can't really give you too much of a preview here because I haven't sat down and edited the program. That's on my agenda for later tonight. But I can tell you it's not just the Hitler death hoax story we're going to explore. We're also going to talk about a whole bunch of little things involving World War II. I guess little is probably not the right word. We're going to talk about the insane plundering of Europe by the Nazis, how they stole all kinds of art and artifacts throughout Europe. We're going to get into really some of the players behind the scenes in the Nazi party and how they were really pulling the strings behind Hitler, and we'll get into some of the really specialized units of the British and American armies that were running around throughout Europe during the war doing all kinds of weird stuff. So it's not just the Hitler death hoax. It's a lot of other additional sort of esoteric and arcane elements surrounding World War II, and truly a conversation that I really, really enjoyed quite a bit. And I think the BoA audio listeners are going to be captivated by this edition of the program. That's next time on BoA Audio. Gerard Williams, co-author of Grey Wolf, The Escape of Adolf Hitler. And on that note, we close the book on this edition of the program. Big thanks once again to Jason Offutt for coming back on the show. Big thanks to Tom in Dayton for writing in for BoA Audio listener feedback. And, of course, enormous thanks to all the folks out there who are listening right now, the hardcore BoA Audio listeners. You guys are the best, the fuel that drives the BoA mothership. Thank you for your support of the program. You folks are amazing. Thank you once again for making BoA Audio a part of your esoteric audio playlist. Until next time, this is Tim Binnall, thanking you for listening and signing off.